The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Yo, what up? This is Rocky Asuka Romero of Chaos, and you are listening to Keepin' It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keeping It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keeping It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out and bury all the frauds. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith and Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. And we are here for our bonus episode to preview the 2020 Keeping It Strong Style New Japan Year-End Awards, our 4th annual Year-End Awards. And of course, every year as tradition, we have Rich on to preview and break down all these nominees and categories. How you doing, Rich?
Oh man, I'm chilling. Glad to be here. It's so funny to hear the intro at a normal speed. I usually have it on like 1.8, and it's a lot faster of an experience. But glad to be here and ready to talk about a very, very interesting, to say the least, year in New Japan. But most of this stuff will be good here.
I was thinking about the theme song and how it's like, and you're listening with your host Jeremy and Jeremy Donovan and Joshua Smith. And then before, you should actually record a special version for when you come on and be like, and me, B.
Yeah, man, something like, might have to take that 6 stars out of there because I ain't, 6 stars this year. So might have to readjust that.
I never seen a 6-star match in my life.
I've seen some.
All right.
Oh man, but this is gonna be fun. We are recording this the day after Thanksgiving, and got a lot to be thankful for here with this year in New Japan. So yeah, I'm excited to do this with you guys once again.
Yeah, man, and if you're listening to this, the voting is already open, so you can check on the New Japan Reddit, our Discord, our Twitter, the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group, all over the place. If you voted last year, you should have gotten an email. So yeah, the voting is live, and we're gonna go through all the categories this year. Like we mentioned in the previous shows, we have some new categories that we did for this year. So we'll talk about those, but I think we're gonna start at the top like we normally do.
Well, before we do that, a couple things. Let's start it off here. Number one, if you're listening, we want you to vote. So please go out and vote. Where are the places they can find it, Jeremy?
So you can find it on the New Japan Reddit, our Discord channel, our Twitter account at KI Strong Style, the Facebook group Wrestling Squared Circle. Pretty much anywhere that there's a New Japan space on the internet, we're going to be throwing this thing out here. Like I mentioned, if you voted last year, you should have gotten an email. So yeah. Yeah,
and I'm reaching out to some groups.
If you want to...
I was going to say, I'm reaching out to some groups in the Facebook stratosphere to see if they'll also allow us to join with their groups and kind of post there too as well.
Yeah, man, and if you want to get your mail-in ballots in, you're more than welcome to write on a notebook, piece of paper, with no guarantee that they will be counted. We will make sure we have to stop the count if some stuff goes on that we don't want to happen here.
Yeah, we're gonna get a 2 a.m. Conference call from Evil being like, I won this shit, it's over, stop the count.
All boy club, stop the count.
Yes.
But in all seriousness, one thing we'd just like to preface, if this is the first time you're listening, or if you're joining us once again, as we break down these categories, we will not be trying to necessarily persuade you to vote one way or the other. We leave that open to you. Me and Jeremy have put in countless hours of research and work and video watching and scouring the internet for videos and debate and study. This is a year-long passion project, so it's not like, just a little bit of forethought goes into it. It's a lot of work, so we are glad to have you guys here as we break these down, and we will try to give you the most unbiased but truthful accounting of each category for the year.
Yeah, and if you're new to the voting, how it works, there is a first place, second place, and third place vote for each category. So your first place vote is worth 3 points, your second place vote is worth 2 points, and your third place vote is worth 1 point. At the end of the voting, we'll add all those up, and that's how we'll get our first, second, and third place winners for each category.
Yeah, always very exciting. Always great to kind of speculate how we think the voting may or may not turn out, just based on, our expertise, knowledge, and we're going to try and, make this be a really awesome guide for you guys. So if you're not sure who you're voting for, you can use this as a companion piece to kind of just, inform yourself. I know it's been a hard year for a lot of people. Not everyone's, stayed up to date like, the Keepin' It Strong style crew. So, glad to have you guys here.
Yeah, so let's start at the top. Probably the biggest, category that we have here, the Antonio Inoki Wrestler of the Year Award. So this is the year we actually have the most nominees that we've had since doing this award. So our nominees this year, we have the Golden Star, Kota Ibushi, the Stone Pitbull, Tomohiro Ishii, Tetsuya Naito, the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada, Will Ospreay, Minoru Suzuki, Taking Time Bomb, Hiromu Takahashi, the Ace, Hiroshi Tanahashi, the Dragon, Shingo Takagi, and last but not least, the Switchblade, Jay White.
Yeah, I'll start us off right off the bat. For me personally, when we were kind of considering this, it almost was basically a four-way race. And the four gentlemen I had in mind as far as who I thought we should nominate wouldn't be what you would necessarily call your conventional big four or big five or your pillars or what have you. And so it kind of became very tough for us to kind of narrow down the field. In other years, we've been able to get down to like 5, 6, maybe even 8. But we kind of just knew there'd be a lot of uproar if we left some of these other bigger names that people, will have arguments for. And as we kind of like examined it, there are arguments for almost everybody on this list. So it's not like anyone's undeserving. But for me, it was like these four guys are clearly from a match work rate, angle, feud standpoint, maybe like the top leaders. And it's just a very interesting year. I'll throw a name out there, Kazuchika Okada, not your traditional Kazuchika Okada year, if you know what I'm saying, when you compare him to someone like, say, a Tomohiro Ishii or Minoru Suzuki, something like that.
I think based on the candidates, it seems like as you mentioned, Josh, like usually there's like a couple candidates that just grab you by the neck, like, hey, this is my award. I feel like the ceiling has kind of come down from where it is, and it's essentially pushed up some of those guys that were always just like a step behind or whatever, like as far as whatever, and kind of flattened it out this year. So it should be a much more like interesting race, looking at guys like Ishii and Suzuki possibly having a chance to steal one of these. Also, as you mentioned, like Okada, like I feel like every single Okada year has been better than this one. Also looking at Ibushi and Naito, and these don't feel like signature years for these guys. So it's going to be real interesting to see like where people go with it. Maybe they go with a junior. Maybe they are having maybe they have a chance to appreciate Shingo Takagi's excellence of the Never Champion. So the ceiling being lowered, I think, is like spread it out a little bit more.
Yeah, you mentioned all those guys. I mean, you mentioned like Kazuchika Okada. There might be some people questioning, why have Okada on there? But I mean, you look back to the beginning of his year, 2 5-star matches back-to-back with Ibushi and Naito, kind of rolls into the Taichi feud, and then the pandemic happens, and then he comes back and he is on this side quest with Takahashi, kind of gets knocked out of New Japan Cup Finals from Evil, And then it just kind of had an okay year, but then you get back to the G1, and he's starting to have some great matches again, most notably the match with Shingo that a lot of people loved. And so one thing is you can never count somebody out until after G1, because going into G1, it was like,
correct,
man, like we're going to have like, Josh mentioned like 3-4 nominees for this thing, but then G1 happened, and a lot of these guys elevated their stock, especially the guys, that were stuck either in the UK or States, Switchblade Jay White, who's mainly been stuck to New Japan Strong, and then Will Ospreay, who's been in the UK, and he's been doing some of those Rev Pro and countered shows, but getting into Japan and getting in for the G1 really helped both of those guys out. And then, Hiromu Takahashi, a guy who's benefited from the pandemic and was able to be in New Japan Cup and get an IWGP title shot against Evil in the main event of a show.
Two things that I've noticed that really factor into this race here. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that the company was shut down for 3-4 months due to the COVID pandemic, and that really changed a lot of the outcomes here, because like you mentioned, Jeremy, several of the wrestlers here, for instance, Will Ospreay started so hot at the beginning of the year that it was almost like, man, this guy's about to have another banner year back to back. Then he can't come back until G1, so it really kind of changed things for him. A few other guys as well. So I think that's one thing that plays into the role here. The other thing, too, is the transitional state that we're in with New Japan Pro Wrestling, where a lot of the old guard is starting to kind of not finish, but kind of come down in the in their placement within the hierarchy of the company. And like Rich mentioned, that kind of has created an almost open space where more people that might not have traditionally been, eligible to win this thing are kind of more realistic candidates than they have been in years past. And I think you kind of have to kind of figure out what sort of voter you are, because realistically, if you're like, okay, I'm looking for the guy who's the top champion, the best matches, the best storylines, the best tournament runs, just all around slam dunk, you're not going to find it on this list this year. Yeah. You've got 10 candidates who you can make arguments for based on what type of voter you are. And we've never set any sort of like specific, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
criteria.
Parameters.
Yeah, criteria for what this vote is. Some people vote strictly based off match quality. And if you do that, you're probably looking at, Shingo, you're looking at Ishii, you're looking at a guy like Suzuki. Then there's some people that if you're looking at like their trajectory within the company and things like that, maybe Hiromu's maybe more your speed, or Naito's like emergence as the double champion, his run with the titles this year, Kota Ibushi, going back to back in the G1. So I mean, there's a lot to kind of consider when you're thinking about who this might be.
So I guess I'll bring them up because so Evil won the IWGP Championship and the Intercontinental Double Championship and did not end up as a Wrestler of the Year nominee. I would like everyone that when last time I was on this show after Dominion, I would like everyone that just said, hey, give us some time to play out. You guys are overreacting. I would like you guys to report to the comment section and ask you, how about it now? And also, Sonata, unbelievable. Man makes a G1 final, not a nominee. Has there been anyone more exposed than Sonata?
With Sonata, I think the two glaring marks are the fact that he didn't have a standout New Japan Cup, but he made it to the semifinals?
Yeah, he got
semifinals, I believe.
Yeah,
he didn't have a standout G1, and he ended up in the finals. I loved the two best matches he had this year were the match with Ibushi in the finals, and then the match with Zack Sabre at Wrestle Kingdom. And other than that, it's honestly been a lackluster year for him. And speaking of Evil, I mean, we've spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about Evil, but I mean, we couldn't, in good faith or good conscience, put him on the same pedestal as these guys here. And I think it is a glaring remark that you've got a double champion, an IWGP title holder. I mean, I can't think of any other years since we started this where someone who held either of those two titles and was a regular part of the roster just didn't end up as a Wrestler of the Year candidate.
Yeah, and that speaks a lot.
I think it's a glaring, it says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some evil fans out there. They're probably going to be mad that he's not on here. But when you compare, you want to look bell to bell and compare him to all the stuff that these guys did. It's just the comparison's not there. The compelling feuds, just everything that you would, look at to vote in this category, evil just wasn't there.
One other thing you got to kind of throw out this year is drawing ability, because we've been in a primarily pandemic era. Anything after like March of this year is completely, we have no clue who's drawing, who's not, limited capacity crowds, half capacity crowds. Even if, like, say Naito was running at the top of G1s and they're selling out, we really don't know what that even means when it's like a quarter, 30%, 50%, yada, yada. So, I mean, that's another thing that I think a lot of people would have taken into consideration in the past, which isn't really there. Now, for the first quarter of the year, it is kind of there for Naito. He's got, Wrestle Kingdoms under his belt, and he's not alone in that, but I think a lot of people were turning up for those nights, based on his story, as well as the big New Beginning in Osaka show with him and Kenta. So that is one thing that he has going for him. But aside from that, what do you guys have any specific thoughts on any of these candidates?
I think it's amazing that Hiroshi Tanahashi is able to end up on here. Ace is 44 years old, and not like a 50-year-old Minoru Suzuki, like where Suzuki wrestles like kind of the same match every time, and it's it slaps. It's a real literally like Suzuki does his match. Yeah, but Tanahashi is like, you talk about just being awe-inspiring as you changing with the times. I think he's incredible. I think he's one of the best wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. I'm not sure. I don't think he'll win this category, but I think it's amazing he's even here.
Yeah, and when you talk about Tanahashi, you also have to talk about Kota Ibushi, because they spent the majority of this year as a tag tandem, as Golden Ace, and traditionally, I don't think the work of a tag team would necessarily qualify you for Wrestler of the Year, and I certainly don't think it does in their case, but I think it bolsters both of their cases, because they were essentially a mega team with two superstar singles guys working to really progress the tag team division, but it also played into the greater story arcs that each of them had, leading into New Japan Cup, leading into the G1, and then the work that both of those guys did in their tournaments and their singles feuds, aside from just what they did in Golden Ace, is really a testament to both of their strengths.
Yeah, definitely.
Tanahashi carried the sorry B block on his back.
Oh, he was MVP for sure. What were you saying, Jeremy?
No, so yeah, definitely agreeing with what you were saying. And Tanahashi, like you mentioned, it's one of those things where people are like, "Oh man, I can't believe Tanahashi had a great match." I was like, "Well, when did he stop having great matches?" Like, he's never stopped having great matches. And like you mentioned, Rich, he's adapted his style. No matter who he's going against, what quote unquote injury he's selling. He finds a way to have these kind of compelling and just entertaining matches, and he earned his way on here.
I also say I was the Tomohiro Ishii. I think his consistency in past years possibly could be rewarded this year, because like you notice, like some of these guys were talking about, oh, they had great years in the past but not so great this year. Oh, maybe they might be going up, but there's one guy that's always been there, that has always produced at a certain level, and whether there were fans or not, whether there was an empty building or not, there was one guy we could count on. You guys know who it is.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, Rich, for sure. No, I don't. I'm not gonna blast you on the air. I'm gonna do that private. But when it comes to Tomohiro Ishii, there are some things going against him if you think about it. No singles titles at all in the year. Almost every feud he was in this year, he lost. Almost no emphasis on him as a singles competitor whatsoever. But then, when you kind of contrast that against his match output, go to Cage Match, look up 2020 New Japan Match Guide, put it in order of the best matches, and then do a word search for the word Ishii, and out of the top 100 matches, you're going to see 19 of them are Tomohiro Ishii, the most of any competitor in this list by far. And then go and do the Match Guide, same search, but just do it for all matches in 2020, 13 or 14 of them in the top 100 of the world are still Tomohiro Ishii matches. So the MVP in the G1, the MVP in the New Japan Cup, his big victory over Jay White at, where were they at, the Budokan?
Yeah, Budokan Hall.
The A block, yeah, and the Budokan.
I mean, so even with the losses, I mean, the guy has just had a stellar year with almost little to no emphasis put upon him from a story or title achievement standpoint from the company. I think I don't even want to call him a dark horse this year, because every year he's kind of a dark horse. I think this year he might be one of the top leading candidates to win this thing. First time ever. Crazy.
Yeah, and like, Rich was mentioning earlier, I think this is going to be one of those years where, like, the in-ring guys like Ishii, Shingo, and Suzuki are definitely, like, this could be one of their years. Maybe those three guys even place in the top three. I definitely think those guys have a really great chance in the voting here. And, I just want to touch on, Will Ospreay real quick. I know he's not everybody's favorite for personal reasons, but when you talk about just what he does in wrestling, at the beginning of the year, having that incredible match with Hiromu at the Dome. He had the incredible feud with Zack Sabre Jr. for the Rev Pro title towards the beginning of the year. It's really looking, like you mentioned, Josh, to have like another banner year. And then the pandemic happened, and then came back with the G1. And the G1 really solidified his name here. Just having great matches there. The matches with Okada and Ibushi. And, I mean, they didn't quite hit the heights like people were expecting, but they were still great matches. Had a great tournament overall, and then the heel turn towards the end of the tournament and the formation of its own faction in the Empire. I think that all kind of helped Will's case here.
Yeah, Will, some of the top matches of the year, the match with Hiromu, the match with Shingo in the G1, and then when you take into consideration, like, okay, you look at his G1, he wasn't performing at quite the highest of high levels that we're used to from him, but then when you factor in the idea that it was a slow build heel turn and you kind of graded on that curve and you compare it to, say, like Jay White's first year in the G1, then it's worlds and differences apart and you're like, oh, I see what they were doing. I don't know if there's as many wrestlers that were here for such a limited time that maximized as much of their opportunities as Will Ospreay. So he's definitely a clear candidate. I could say the same thing about Hiromu Takahashi. This is someone who was given some new opportunities. He wrestled in the New Japan Cup. He was one of the top MVPs in that tournament as well. But the idea that him as the junior champion defeating top heavyweights, that was a big deal, especially the win over Ishii, and then going life and death with Okada in the same tournament was nuts. And pretty much the guy that was bolstering the junior division along the way. And when we talk about people now, if you look at who's had great matches, I actually think Hiromu, we almost took him off the ballot because he's had less great matches than anyone else on this roster. But when you consider that he wasn't in a G1 at all, and he's still in the same company as all these guys who were given the opportunity to have those 10 matches, his matches were at the top of the company. The match with Will Ospreay, like we mentioned, the match with Rhea Lee from New Beginning, the match with Tomohiro Ishii. He's one of the few people, again, who maximized the time that was given to them. He wasn't given as many opportunities, but still is in the same company as these guys.
Says a lot about him. And then, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, one of the best title reigns in the world this year, Shingo having the Never title throughout the year. He's just... He showed a bastion of consistency that that belt has needed, and you weren't getting the work rate from the from the U.S. or excuse me you weren't getting the U.S. belt at all. You weren't getting the work rate from the IWGP belts. So for those of you like me who like the great matches, Shingo Takagi is a hell of a candidate here.
Yeah. The thing with Shingo, too, is he raised the stock of so many challengers and competitors that were not seen as top guys. Guys like Desperado, guys like Ishii, guys like Goto, guys like Sho. And you look at his list of guys, I don't know if other people in the company could have raised so many great wrestlers to, truly great status the way he did.
Right, and also just having some compelling feuds. I mean, I know we'll talk about Feud of the Year later, but the feuds with guys like Suzuki, Sho, Ishii, and just having these kind of banner feuds, these great kind of post-match attacks and promos and stuff like that. He just was just a standout star throughout the promotion. Like you guys mentioned, just elevated that Never title. We joke about the the Never committee being better than the IWGP committee this year, and just how standout both Never titles were, and just the way Shingo just kind of carried that Never title and just had these great matches, and there were literally the highlights on several shows.
Yeah, we talk about the Never division always being this hard-hitting, hostile division, and they always are. And you look at runs that guys like Shibata, Nagata, Suzuki, Ishii, Goto have had in that. But I've never seen any of them raise the stock of the title to where it's the top title in the entire company. That's what Shingo did this year, which is truly remarkable.
And damning.
well, while we're on the topic, let's talk about Naito real quick.
Yeah, so Tetsuya Naito, Tokyo Dome was a big night for him. LIJ fans have been, clamoring for this man to finally kind of get his big Wrestle Kingdom moment. So January 4th, he wins the IC title, and then he goes into night 2 and defeats Okada finally at the Dome, wins both titles, kind of a big banner moment for him, first ever double IWGP champion, and it's an incredible match there for Okada. Then he goes on and faces Kenta. Kenta ruined the moment there and ended up drawing a pretty big house there for New Beginning in Osaka. And then also, we have the pandemic and things come back. Obviously he's not in the New Japan Cup, but then he is involved in kind of one of the bigger angles of the year with Evil turning on him and LIJ and joining Bullet Club, which led to the whole Evil and Naito rivalry that was over the titles. And obviously big LIJ fans were really into that, and that meant a lot to them and really enjoyed that feud. Obviously, they didn't quite deliver on the matches for I think for most of us, but it was still kind of the focal point of the company. A lot of time and attention was spent on those feuds and those matches, and a lot of the angles of Dick Togo coming in, and finally having like LIJ come in and make the save on Naito's matches, and so. Yes, Naito might not have had the best bell-to-bell year, but as far as achievements and kind of push and, star power, charisma, fan interaction, Naito was the guy there.
Yeah, for someone who, there's been indictments on the heavyweight scene in New Japan this year, and for good reason. And granted, not every single Naito match landed this year, but let's be clear here. Saddled with an Evil 4-match series, champion in the middle of a global pandemic, wasn't allowed to compete in the New Japan Cup, had his title reign cut short in the middle of the year. There's quite a few booking and business decisions that kind of went against him this year that I find problematic. But when you look at his overall year, drew 3 of the biggest houses of the year anywhere in the world pre-pandemic. The title win against Okada, one of the best matches of the year, and one of the loudest crowd reactions I've ever seen. The Kenta feud, people were extremely invested in that. Even though the matches didn't live up to the hype, the feud with Evil, one of the biggest feuds of the year, one of the talks of the wrestling world. And then you look at the matches that he did have aside from the Evil matches. I mean, the matches with Jay White, the match with Tanahashi, the match with Okada, the match with Zack Sabre Jr., match with Sonata. He still was wrestling, I wouldn't even say at a top level, but maybe one of the better levels than, he put forth more effort this year than he has in several years consistently. So for those reasons, I think he's still a candidate, absolutely.
So I just want to ask the LIJ fans and the Naito enthusiasts a couple things. I just want to point out a couple things I assume that they like this year. Be honest. You guys love seeing the Garrote Wire, in the IWGP title matches. It was almost like, another participant. You loved seeing him wrestle Evil 4 times. You loved when him and Kenta had a match so bad that Jeremy and Josh had to go back through like 5 years of IWGP title matches to find one worse. I'm sure these are all like great things you guys just loved about this guy, but were you happy with this? That's all I can ask them. After all these years,
everything you're bringing up
was this it? Was this it?
Those are all evil problems. They're not Naito problems. And trust me, like
Evil wasn't in that Kenta match.
But still, you know what? People like that match. Even though maybe I or Jeremy didn't necessarily love it, that was like a pretty praised match in general. I think we laid out a pretty compelling argument for why he's still deserving. We've got 3 people here left to go. If each one of us just wants to take one real quick, we got Ibushi, Suzuki, and Jay White.
I'll take Kota Ibushi. So Ibushi, he's at a crossroads, I think. There's a lot, he's been beat down a lot. Of course, he won the G1. He's a part of a awesome tag team all year. He has the great main event against Okada. But I think it's weird. I feel like his story's kind of incomplete still, because we have to see, like, was this all worth it come Wrestle Kingdom time? Knowing that the voting cuts off, today, assumingly, like the voting's live now. I don't know about Ibushi, because, I would say he has he's got the title reign with Tanahashi, the tag belts. He's got, he won the G1, but he kind of just floated until the end, and you looked up, Ibushi won.
Bro, he was like the second.
I don't know.
He was the second best guy in the G1.
But it didn't seem narratively like it was his until like he needed a lot of help for that to happen, and he almost wasn't in control of his own destiny, in a way.
Yeah.
So it just feels kind of different for him rather than last year, where it was like, oh hell yeah, like he just blasts through the thing and he's just on fire. Like he has a different year this year, I think. But it's going to come down to what you guys think of him. So does that loss of the briefcase damn him? We'll see.
I think the biggest thing with Ibushi is you're looking at a similar situation to Tomohiro Ishii. Now, granted, yeah, he was tag champion. He did win the G1, but he lost the 2 big matches in the Tokyo Dome. He lost his title briefcase defense. So, from a narrative standpoint, you're correct. It is a down year from him. But when you look at match quality, when you're looking at match quality, just total match quality, the top 3 guys in the company are Shingo, Ishii, and Ibushi from a quality standpoint and consistency. And Ibushi fucking ruled in the ring all year long against every person he wrestled the whole year. And that's his argument, just like Ishii and similar to Shingo.
Yeah, Ibushi just great bell in-ring year. Yeah, probably not the best year for him kayfabe-wise, but yeah, definitely. When you mentioned you go to cage match, you go to grapple, you look at the star ratings, you look at the match quality, Ibushi was there. And another guy who had that match quality, Minoru Suzuki. Here's a guy who started off the year, being left off of Wrestle Kingdom, but he did have that big angle with Jon Moxley at the beginning, which led to their new beginning match for the U.S. title. And then he's going in there. He's feuding with guys like Shingo Takagi, which happened after the pandemic. That was kind of a big feud there for the Never title. His stuff with Nagata, that feud that kicked off the New Japan Cup, or Nagata got that upset on him, which led to their feud and them having a big match during the Summer Struggle tour. And then you look at his G1, just incredible G1. The matches with Kota Ibushi, the rematch with Shingo. Like, he was just having the
Ishii match.
Yeah, the Ishii match. Just having so many great, hard-hitting matches. And this guy is, 52 years old. And he's still having, some of the better matches in the company.
Yeah, if we had an award for person with the most great feuds, he'd win it. The Moxley feud, the Nagata feud, the Shingo feud. That puts him over the top. Here's someone where he has a lot of great matches. Not quite as many as some of the other guys, like, say, Ishii, Ibushi, or Shingo, but he's just underneath that. But then when you look at narrative-wise, regaining the never openweight title, having probably one of the best G1s of his entire career, and he did it all at 52 years old. I think he's a dark horse to win the whole thing, and I think it could actually be realistic, he might pull it out, which is crazy.
I think he's definitely going to get votes, and you guys mentioned him being 52 years old. I don't think there's ever been a better year for a 52-year-old, unless Terry Funk did something I don't know about. But I don't know what year that would have been. But yeah, he was. If you think about how he was a year ago, we were thinking this guy was on the way out of the company, and for him to just turn around and be like, whether some new money came in for him or whatever happened, he was like, well, they kind of phased me down for 2019, so all that means is in 2020 I get to do all these feuds and kind of be fresh for them, even though Suzuki is Suzuki at this point. But him going back to the previous levels that he was at, like I said, once that top comes down a little bit, as far as you're not seeing 5-star matches every single night in the main event. So when that top comes down, that allows that next realm of guys to just punch through a little harder. And who the hell punched through harder than this guy, or slapped through harder? So.
All right. Well, then I'll finish this out with Jay White. Jay White, was gone for most of the pandemic. Wasn't able to make the New Japan Cup. Wasn't able to work Dominion, any of that stuff. But you look at the early part of the year. He had the 2-match series in the Tokyo Dome with Naito and Ibushi. Divisive matches in some circles, but ultimately praised by a lot of people. And then when he returned and then kind of was the big star aside from Kenta that held things down in America with the New Japan Strong and making his appearances there, which was kind of unfathomable at the time. And I think one thing that helps his case this year, believe it or not, is the comparisons to Evil, with Evil kind of in some circles and kind of floundering. You kind of compared him to his direct rival in Jay White, and it sort of made Jay White's year even better, even when he wasn't active in the company. But the thing that really put him over the top, the G1, almost winning the G1, being the points leader the entire time, probably having the best G1 of his career, improving upon his great G1 from last year, and then having a great match with Ibushi to close out the year where he won the opportunity to challenge for the title at Wrestle Kingdom. Those are his strengths this year.
He feels more fully formed than he ever has this year. He's in touch with the current state of the crowds, like a Juice Robinson, but this is the heel version of it. He's someone that I have not necessarily been the biggest fan of in the past, but he's working at a master heel level. He's dripping in charisma, and just you look at him and you feel like he wants to be the best in his own way. Are you going to get some bullshit in his matches? Yes, but Josh brought up an astute point. By default, he has looked like a diamond compared to the doo-doo that was Evil. So that's amazing. When you think about it.
Yeah, you think back to when he first kind of came on the scene here, and there's a ton of mixed reactions, and just starting off not so hot with that match with Tanahashi, but ever since then, like you guys mentioned, he's kind of come into his own. I think he's kind of at the peak of his game right now. Like you mentioned, Josh, even better G1 than last year. So the match quality is there. Promos, obviously being an English speaker guy, we can hear him more. He's always obviously having these promos, and one of the best promos out there, and it really kind of helps pull the strings and kind of set up these feuds with some of his promos and angles that he's in. And so obviously still a big focal point in the company. Obviously we're eventually going to get some kind of Bullet Club fallout with him and Evil. But yeah, him coming back in, he was right back in the top mix, and then ends up winning the right to challenge briefcase, and now is going to be main eventing the second night of the Dome. So overall, a really good year for the Switchblade. And so I think that's going to wrap up our wrestler.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Our Wrestler of the Year talk. So now we'll move on to the next category, Match of the Year. So for our Match of the Year nominees, we have Kazuchika Okada versus Kota Ibushi from Wrestle Kingdom 14. We have Kazuchika Okada versus Tetsuya Naito from Wrestle Kingdom 14. Will Ospreay versus Hiromu Takahashi from Wrestle Kingdom 14. Hiromu Takahashi versus Ryo Lee from New Beginning in Osaka. Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Tetsuya Naito from the G1. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Will Ospreay from New Beginning in Sapporo. Shingo Takagi versus Will Ospreay from the G1. Kazuchika Okada versus Shingo Yasuke Okada versus Shingo Takagi from the G1, Kota Ibushi versus Tomohiro Ishii from the G1, and Kota Ibushi versus Minoru Suzuki from the G1.
A lot of great matches, man. So I think it's wherever you want to go. I think there's a dividing line. There's stuff that happened before the pandemic, and then there's stuff that happens after the pandemic got started. And it's hard, for me to measure something like a Ryu Lee and Hiromu Takahashi against one of the clap crowd main events, and it's like, because I just remember being in love with that match, Takahashi and Lee. But I think this is gonna. I don't think match quality is gonna decide this one.
Well, I apologize, far from the mic. Just to kind of throw something out there, I know this is not on our list, but for me, one of the best matches I've seen this entire year, and it might even be my overall match of the year, which hasn't, been an outside of New Japan match in years, but for me it was Walter and Ilya Dragunov from NXT UK, and that was an empty arena match. Now, I know not every match is or isn't determined completely based on the atmosphere and the crowd. Obviously, like you mentioned, Rich, crowd plays a big hand in it. But for me, for the integrity of this war, it's really simple. Would a lot of these clap crowd matches or empty arena matches have been better had there been crowds? Possibly. But at the end of the day, you got to play the hand that you were dealt. And for us, what I feel like is, which one of these matches is the fucking best? That's that's the long and short of it. What's the fucking best match this year?
Yeah, when you look at Wrestle Kingdom 14, produced 3 of the top matches here on this list. Yasuke Okada is back-to-back with 2 5-star matches with Kota Ibushi on night 1, Tetsuya Naito on night 2. But that night 1 match of Ibushi was just absolutely incredible. Those guys, they had wrestled in the G1 in that previous year, but you kind of felt like they were holding stuff back, and then they unleashed it all on night 1 here at Wrestle Kingdom 14, and just had this absolutely incredible, stellar main event. The main event you expect from an IWGP title match. And it was just awesome matchup here, and pretty much it was the front runner pretty much for the majority of the year. And then obviously the LIJ fans are probably going to put the Naito match over it again, another 5-star classic, and finally the culmination of this journey of Naito winning the title. And these guys always have great matches together, and night 2 was no different. And then Ospreay and Hiromu, the big kind of first singles match since Hiromu returned. We saw he came back in the Road to Tokyo Dome, even a pinfall loss to Robbie Eagles in a tag match. We're not fully sure what he could do, but then he came out here and answered all the questions, showed that the neck was all right, and has had this awesome 5-star banger with Ospreay.
I think it's going to be interesting what happens between the 2 top main events of the 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom. Generally speaking, very often the main event of Wrestle Kingdom is the biggest match of the year, best atmosphere, and we get the best performances from guys. Very often it is the match of the year. It happens very often. But, we talk about situations in categories where votes get split. I am wondering, with how great both of those 2 main events are, will it split the difference? Because, match quality is subjective, and if you're in it strictly for the build, the story, and the moment, and the atmosphere, you're not going to get one that's bigger or better this year than Okada Naito. But if you're looking strictly at match quality, then you might probably be like in the Okada Ibushi camp, and it does make me wonder if this is going to get split. And I do think that the match quality in both matches are very, very, very close. But it's an interesting thought to see how that's going to play out, really.
So just looking at it, it looks like you got 3 Okada matches on here, so he's got 3 chances to win. Bushi has 3 different appearances as well. Will Ospreay, I believe, has 2. Hiromu Takahashi has 2, I believe, unless my eyes are playing tricks on me. Yep, he has
Takahashi
2.
Has 2. Ospreay actually has 3.
Naito has 2 as well.
And Shingo has 2.
Ospreay has 3. Okay. Yeah, so...
Well, let's talk about some of these new beginning matches. Hiromu Takahashi, Ryu Lee, Zack Sabre Jr., and Will Ospreay. Kind of in the aftermath of Wrestle Kingdom, these were two of the best matches that happened this year. Zack and Will kind of being a long-term story that overarcs not just from New Japan, but also to their days in the UK Indies, especially in Rev Pro. That match was for the UK title. And Zack never having won that title, being the biggest star in the UK, failing many times, and then, wanting to lift that belt off of Will. And he went out there and proved that he could wrestle the British style. He's not just a high flyer, but he's one of the most well-rounded wrestlers.
Yeah, you have the other way around. It was Will trying to lift off of Zack.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I misspoke. Sorry about that. But Will just showcasing how great of a talent he is. And then the climax of that match where Zack literally passes Will Ospreay out in the middle of the ring, and I expected Will to win, and Will goes to sleep, leading to the rematch that they had in Rev Pro. It was incredible. It was like poetry.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be one of the matches.
Takahashi and I'm just gonna say Dragon Lee. I'm just gonna say Dragon Lee, but because we know what the fuck it is. But this was the junior heavyweight version of Kenzo Kobashi versus versus Kenzo. This is a junior heavyweight version of
Kensuke
Kobashi versus Kensuke Sasaki, yes. With all those chops that they opened up with, you knew this was crazy. I'll never forget that. How that started, and this being such a rich rivalry, in the history, going back to before 2017 even, and I just hope these guys get to wrestle each other a million more times, because this is a legendary rivalry with another legendary entry right here.
Yeah, and I think both of these matches are going to be matches that kind of get forgotten about, maybe swept under the rug, because they happen right after Wrestle Kingdom. They happen right before the pandemic, so people kind of remember Wrestle Kingdom and not really quite what happened after that. But this New Beginning Tour produced a lot of great matches, and like you mentioned, Hiromu, Ryu Lee, that great rivalry, that great chemistry. And that was an incredible matchup. But that Sabre Ospreay, I think that's definitely one that's going to be forgotten about. Partially because people, how they feel about Will Ospreay, and then because it was the beginning of the year. But that's an incredible matchup, like you mentioned, Josh, that led to that big rematch. And that was like a program. That was a great feud that they had at the beginning of the year, because we had several multi-man matchups. There was the elimination match where Ospreay eliminated Sabre to even get the initial title shot. And so there was so much that was built in to this feud for the Rev Pro title, and kind of the beginning of Ospreay solidifying himself as a heavyweight.
Well, coming out of that, it's no surprise the last 5 matches here, all G1 matches. And we got one match from the B block that starts us off, and then every other match that's nominated, all A block. So we'll start with Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tetsuya Naito. This is one that is also going to be based on your opinion. Whereas I wasn't as high on it as a lot of people, the general consensus is that for most of the year, this was one of the matches of the year. Many people have it listed as their match of the year. And it kind of, I'd like to take a victory lap, and not just for me, but also for Jeremy, because I think both of us, when we saw that Naito was winning the double gold, we said, do a 3 or 4 match series next year with Hiroshi Tanahashi. You can finally do it. They didn't do it. They went with Evil instead.
What a choice.
And look at what we could have had all year long. Would we be talking about New Japan, all these voices out here talking about, them being on the downside and yada yada? Had Naito and Tanahashi gone out there and done what they did here 2 or 3 times this year? I really don't think we would, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it would have been an incredible year. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I remember the reaction on this match. I couldn't believe the love I was saying before I saw it or whatever. I was more in Josh's camp when I finally sat down and watched it. I was like, oh, it was very good, but I didn't think it was match of the year candidate myself. But I think that this stands to the power of how much these guys have a lot of fans, both of them, and the fans that have votes. So I think it's going to steal some votes.
I think the deal is when you look at all these different styles of matches, okay, this is a very diverse group of matches. But if I had to say, okay, pick one match out of this group that is the most New Japan big-time main event match style that you could, the traditional one that we've been used to for the last 4 or 5 years, or 6, you're probably going to pick Tanahashi Naito. It is the most by-the-numbers, big-time New Japan IWGP style match that is on this list. I would say even more so than like Okada Ibushi, just in terms of stylistic choice. So I think that might be one reason so many people loved it, is that it is like what they've grown up on. It's what they fell in love with, what they like about this company, and this is emblematic of that.
And they might not be seeing that no more. It might be the last.
Yeah, we got some matches here that are with some of the up and coming stars that do seem to be the direction the company's style is going.
Yeah, and I think with that Tanahashi Naito main event, it came at a time where we were getting these Naito Evil main events, and people were kind of frustrated with the main event scene. So then to have this traditional classic main event matchup with two of the top guys, it was refreshing in a way and exciting, and it got you energized for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, so let's talk about.
Yeah, I'll take this. I'll take that all day compared to whatever else. I think you can put this match heads and shoulders above anything else Naito did as a champion this year.
Well, let's talk about the next matchup. It's a rematch of last year's match of the year in Shingo and Ospreay.
Man. So I think Shingo and Ospreay, this being their second match, and remember they were supposed to do this in the New Japan Cup. You're talking about guys that had a match to live up to, and they almost did it. Some people think they exceeded it. So I think this is another one. Like if you start talking about like fast athletic wrestling, and I think this one is going to get because you look at the empty arena, and then you look at, the clap arena by the time they were there, and you start seeing like what they did, and it's like, holy shit, it doesn't matter if they had fans or not.
Right.
Yeah.
when you look at who one of the top Dragon Gate style wrestlers of the last 10 years have been, you're looking at Shingo. When you're looking at who the best of the indie / New Japan Junior style is, you're looking at Will Ospreay. And then you beef those two boys up, put them in the heavyweight scene. You're talking about one of the best matches of the year. I love this match.
Yeah, absolutely incredible, and so many callbacks from the Best Super Junior match last year. And, I think everybody was really kind of counting on, Shingo to kind of get that win back over Will, and eventually he did. And so, obviously, it opens the door now for a third match down the line, especially now with, Ospreay as a heel and Empire. I think there's some interesting dynamics you can kind of have there for the third matchup. But, yeah, once again, these guys came out here, like you mentioned, Rich, in the clap crowd environment, and still told an incredible story, and were able to suck the crowds in, and it's had another phenomenal matchup.
So we got 3 to go. Why don't you guys talk about Okada Shingo?
So I'll start here. So I absolutely love this match. I know there was a lot of people. This match was kind of divisive, and I think majority of people liked it, but there was definitely some people that didn't think it was quite as great. But I absolutely love this match. With Okada kind of having a down year and implementing the money clip and feuding with Yujiro and Evil, you just weren't getting the classic Rainmaker that you're used to, especially in a G1 scenario. And so finally, this match with Shingo is kind of like the awakening of the Rainmaker in this tournament. And even though he was still going for the money clip, there was still that kind of traditional Okada build and sequences, and Shingo's just one of the best wrestlers in the company, and kind of bringing his intensity in the Dragon Gate style. It's kind of this great clashing of styles, and these guys had great chemistry together. First time matchup, big matchup, and overall, you just kind of got sucked in. It was one of those matches because Okada was having a down year and a down tournament. It made you think that Shingo could beat him, And I really wanted Shingo to beat him, and I was rallying behind Shingo. But obviously, Okada was able to pull it out and get the money clip in and submit or pass out Shingo.
So one thing this year has done is allowed me to work at home a lot during this year, and I've watched tons of matches. Whether I just had them going on my TV right next to me as I do the work for the day. Sometimes I'm able to fall a little bit more into the match. Sometimes I'm not. This was unfortunately one of the times where like I watched the match and kind of just had it going on, and I'd be able to look up like every couple minutes to see what was happening. So I would have to rewatch this one to give it a little bit more of a fair analysis. So I'm gonna just pass this one to Josh.
Well, the long and short of it is this is universally praised as one of the top matches of the year. Now, did I necessarily agree with that? No, and I think that's going to be a reoccurring theme you'll see as we talk about these matches. I wasn't as high on a lot of the matches this year as everyone else was, but that doesn't mean my opinion really matters. Ultimately, it's going to be the voice of the people, and there's a real thing called G1 fatigue. You know, you get delirious towards the end of the G1. You watch so many matches, it's hard to tell what's what. But unanimously, I mean, Dave Meltzer over, 5 stars plus, something like that. It's one of the highest rated matches of the year, so I'm not surprised at all. If this does get a lot of votes or even wins, I wouldn't be surprised. The last 2 matches... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, was there an element of people looking for something to rate 5 stars with this, you think, Josh?
I think, like I said, wrestling's very, it's up to your own perceptions. I didn't necessarily love it, but, I mean, Jeremy went, 5 on it?
I think I went 4.75 on it.
Coward.
I'm a coward.
Coward's rating.
The last 2 matches we have here, Ibushi versus Ishii, and then Ibushi from Suzuki from the G1. Both very similar matches. It does make me wonder if fans of this style, this might be another situation where votes get split, because these are very, they're 2 of the strong style fighting, match hostile battle candidates that we've got on the ballot. And for instance, for me, I liked Ishii and Ibushi better, but I think the Suzuki match got praised more. And it really just depends on what your overall tastes are. But there is no denying that these are 2 of the absolute most violent matches you're going to see the entire year. 2 of the best matches the entire year, and it's why Ibushi is, in the Wrestler of the Year category along with these 2 guys. These matches.
Very interesting with Ibushi. Like Ibushi, every match that he's done this year that's nominated is this new brutal physical war style that he's doing. Like he's slowly using his flying like kind of out of the repertoire and fighting more. It seems like.
Well, you always get that with Ishii, and I think it's hard to avoid that with Suzuki. But yeah, he's like a fish in water with that style, and these matches were breathtaking. I mean, I was like literally like shrieking at the violence of these matches.
Yeah, it's like we've been saying with Ibushi, he's one of the most versatile wrestlers on the roster. You want him to wrestle a comedy match, you can do it. You want him to wrestle junior high flying style, you can do it. You want him to wrestle the traditional main event style, you want him to wrestle these strong style violent matches, he can do it. That's exactly what he did here with both Ishii and Suzuki. Like you, Josh, I was, jumping, squirming when those shots were firing off in that, clap crowd arena. And so, yeah, these guys were throwing bombs, and 2 great violent matchups here.
Yeah, man.
That is going to do it for our match of the year candidates. So let's move on to the 3rd year. If we're talking about a trifecta or a trinity of the top 3 awards, show of the year is the next, biggest category. In that category, we have Wrestle Kingdom 14 Night 1, Wrestle Kingdom 14 Night 2, The New Beginning in Osaka, The Summer Struggle in Jingu, and the last 5 shows are all, or is it 4? The last 6 shows are all G1 nights. So we've got G1 30 Night 1, Night 2, Night 5, Night 11, Night 13, and Night 17.
Crazy. Yeah, so that's like 5 odd number G1 numbers on there. What do the odd numbers normally mean?
Those would be the B blocks. We've got 1 B block night 2 as opposed to the 5 A block nights.
That's so funny.
Oh man. But yeah, so also
But I have the cards for each night pulled up in case we need reference.
I just got one question. So why did you guys decide to split the Wrestle Kingdom? Because I think people will want to know that.
Yeah, I mean, we decided to split them because they were 2 individual shows. And I know it was kind of one big weekend, but if you look at it, I mean, I think it'd be kind of unfair to lump together and just say, oh, it was just one big show. I mean, there was 2 different cards. You had 2 different stories kind of going into both nights. I mean, essentially, yeah, there were 2 different shows. And so, some people think one night was better than the other night. And overall, I think each individual show needs to be kind of compete against the other show of the year.
Yeah, this is show of the year,
Gotcha.
not shows of the year. And, one argument people might have is like, well, the Double Gold Dash, they booked it together, so it's one thing. It's like, well, that's not all that was on these shows, and that's their fault. They booked it that way, so that's, that's not really on us. That's on Gato.
I just wanted to ask, because I'm sure somebody would ask you guys in the comment section. So
I'm
delete
sure
your comment.
someone's going to not listen to this and still ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Wrestle Kingdom kicked off the year in a great way, especially night 1, just the incredible matches on there. Like we mentioned, the main event with Okada and Ibushi for the title. And then you had the Naito and Jay White match. Naito able to get in the IC title. We had the Hiromu Ospreay match we talked about. You had the Texas Death match for the U.S. title with Mox and Archer. You had FinJuice winning their first tag titles by defeating G.O.D. to become champions. You had the big Liger, the first Liger retirement match, the 8-man tag where he's teaming up with Fujinami and Sasuke and Tiger Mask to take on Sano, Taguchi, Otani, and Takaiwa.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
That match has 6.12 on Match Guide. Dave Meltzer gave it 2 3/4. And if you had asked me, I would have put that in our Tag Team of the Year category had I been allowed to. I was overruled. But I fucking love that match. I can't see how that match isn't universally praised as just fucking incredible. People are out of their damn minds.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those situations where, like, if you don't really have that kind of rich respect for the history and the rivalries and really know who those guys were, it just didn't quite hit the same for certain people.
Bro, this man Sano was trying to kill himself for Ligers.
Yeah.
But
They also
yeah,
had like I was gonna say, like, they also had like it seemed like on Wrestle Kingdom they had those random 8-man tags that were out of nowhere that like kind of just were there, like very funny. I feel like if you can take the best of both shows, like you get one great strong show, and I don't know, like it seems like we're gonna get some splitting, and then we're gonna start looking at those cards, and then especially measuring them against like maybe some of these G1 nights where we're like, oh, there's no hole here.
Yeah, and
right. It does depend on what kind of voter you are, because you've got your big shows like Wrestle Kingdom or New Beginning or Dominion that are like a full-on long-form show, but then you've got like, the G1s, especially this night with no undercard, and it's just young line match and then 5 bangers back to back to back to back. It kind of depends on what sort of voter you are. Are you going to judge the show in the context of it being a whole production?
Big show, yeah.
Or are you going to say, I'm just looking at the match quality? Because if you look at this show, I mean, Jeremy gave you a rundown of like 4 or 5 matches. They're comparable to a G1. But then, like you mentioned, Rich, they've got like the 8-man tag. They've got like 5 or 6 tags here on the show too. So it kind of depends on your
stuff you normally
preference.
don't see on Wrestle Kingdom like that. So as
somewhat. I mean, they do like they usually do the Rumble. They usually do the 6-man gauntlet to try to get
4-way
people
corner
on.
match.
Right. So they try their best to get everybody on. But yeah, you're absolutely correct.
yeah, I think that's what's going to hurt night 1 potentially in the votes is having those multi-man tags. So you look at night 2, you have the Never Gauntlet, you have the Liger match with him and Sano against Hiromu and Ryu Lee, You have Roppongi 3K versus Phantasmo and Ishimori for the junior tag titles. You have Sabre and Sonata, Mox and Robinson, Goto and Kenta, Jay White and Ibushi, Jericho and Tanahashi, and then Naito beating Okada in the main event. So this second night's almost more of a traditional style format of Wrestle Kingdom. So I think that can get some votes over night one there.
Now, here's the interesting thing. I think that they booked most of the singles matches on night 2 because it was going to be harder to draw. Like, January 4th is the traditional day they always draw, and they drew more tickets for that show, even with it being the quote-unquote weaker card. On night 5, I think they're trying to bolster it by giving it more of that traditional, Wrestle Kingdom feel. But ultimately for me personally, I'm speaking for me, I like night 1 better than night 2, even with, on paper this sounds better, and it might be for a lot of voters, but for me, I preferred the top end quality of the of the first night versus the overall quality of the second night, if that makes sense. That was my personal opinion anyways.
Gotcha.
So then, you look at New Beginning in Osaka, which again we mentioned earlier, kind of gets lost after the Wrestle Kingdom season, but that was another kind of great card there. Some of the highlights there. You had Roppongi 3K against Suzuki Gun for the junior tag titles. You had Okada and Ospreay against Taichi and Sabre. You had Hiromu defeating Ryu Lee for the junior title. You had Moxley defending the U.S. title successfully against Suzuki. And then the main event, you had Naito getting revenge and retaining the titles against Kenta.
The one gleaming thing you forgot to mention, I know Rich is going to bring up, Jay White versus Sonata, 21 minutes and 52 seconds, fourth from the top.
Well, I was saying
fourth from the top. So
I was saying the highlights.
But it's
look, I'm not as hard on that match as most people are, oddly, because
from the top.
It's not like it's correct. It's fourth from the top, right where it should be.
Yeah, this was a really awesome night. I mean, when you think about Takahashi and Dragon Lee back to back with Jon Moxley and Minoru Suzuki, 2 bangers, and then Naito and Kenta, even though we gave it some trouble, I mean, 4 stars from Wrestling Observer Newsletter, it's still, considered to be a really great match. So, I mean, strong show. One of the strongest traditional shows they did all year that was non-Wrestle Kingdom, for sure.
Yeah, then you look at Summer Struggle in Jingu.
Notice we've jumped from February all the way to August and included no New Japan Cup shows at all.
Yeah, what does that tell you? Yeah, we jumped to August 20, literally the end of August, almost the beginning of September here with Summer Struggle in Jingu. The card, I'm not going to lie, it started off kind of rough with Kanemaru and Master Wato, and then you had the KOPW 4-way. But once you got those out of the way, it picked up. You had Suzuki defeating Shingo for the Never title, Ishimori defeating Hiromu for the junior title. You had Dangerous Tekkers defending successfully against Golden Ace, and then Naito regaining the title from Evil, probably one of their better matches out of their 4-match series, and it was kind of the big moment there of LIJ finally, breaking their code and coming in and helping Naito against Bullet Club.
Yeah, and if you judge this show in the context of it being a full production show, those first 2 matches aren't even really bad in the sense of, like, Master Wato is getting an opening spot against Kanemaru. That's fine, The 4-way was a comedy 4-way, and it was short and sweet, and it was out of the way. I mean, those were just openers. And then after that sizzle, you get nothing but steak for the rest of the show. And it's an outdoor show at a legendary, the ambiance, the atmosphere really added a lot. Plus, it's the largest crowd that we'd had for any New Japan show since the COVID era started. And then the big celebration with Naito standing tall at the end, regaining the titles, the fireworks. So, I mean, it almost had sort of like a old school SummerSlam feel to it a little bit, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that there was no New Japan show. There's no damn Dominion on Show of the Year.
Oh, Dominion sucked this year. I mean, we didn't include it. And it's been our Show of the Year in years past.
Yeah, man. Jarring.
This was Dominion.
But
this was Dominion.
This was the real Dominion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like
very
this year's
cool
not,
atmosphere.
This year's not really Super Juniors.
Yeah. I'll agree with you. Very cool atmosphere for the Summer Struggle in Jingu. For me, I think people are overstating the fireworks thing. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. But you start getting to Shingo and Suzuki on the show, and that's like more my speed. That's like, fuck the bullshit. Let's get to the hitting. Let's leave the girl wire out. Let's leave the foolishness, the rolling out of the ring. Let's roll that. Let's leave that to the side. Let's get back to let's get back to the real.
Do you know what Rich sounds like? He's like, fuck that foreplay.
Right. We don't need none of that. We are talking hard, fast, pounding action here.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
That's so funny.
So then we have the last 6 G1 shows here. So G1 night 1, 2, 5, 11, 13, and 17.
Now, interesting thing here, you've got 6 shows. We could talk, Rich was kind of like with a smirk talking about how, there's 5 A block shows. Well, guess what? There's 5 A block shows. How are the voters going to differentiate between the 5 A block shows? They're so good that they probably stand a really good chance of splitting votes unless one of them stands out head and shoulders above each other. And it's almost like they're damned because they're too good.
Yeah, and I'm looking on Cage Match right now on the show rankings. And right now, night 13, which we have on here, is the leading show here, which had the.
I'd probably agree with that.
Which had the Okada Shingo main event, which got 5.25 from Dave. It's 9.29 on Cage Match. You had the Ibushi Suzuki match that night. You had Ospreay and Taichi that night. Cobb and Ishii, which was a great opener for the G1 that night. And then you had the kind of quick Jay White and Yujiro match, which was funny. It was kind of a story, kind of element match, and it was 3 minutes, so it wasn't, got in, got out of there. And so, yeah, that was a pretty solid night right there.
Yeah, that was a really, really great night. Many people calling it like the best G1 night of all time. I don't know that I agree with it, but had to be up there. Taking a look at these nights as well. So night 17, which was the A block finals, that one really stands out as well. You've got Ishii and Jay White in the main event, barely missed our match of the year category. Literally, it was a fraction, basically we just had to cut it off because we didn't want to have more than 10 matches, but this probably would have been the next one. And then you're looking at Ibushi and Taichi with the match where they did nothing but kick each other for 17 minutes, and it's one of the best matches of the year. Ospreay and Okada with the big Ospreay turn and the formation of the Empire. Shingo and Suzuki kind of continuing their feud, having another banger. And then Yujiro and Cobb with the story of Yujiro having won no matches in the tournament, and he finally gets the big W against Cobb, which kind of leads to Cobb's joining up with the Empire. So, a pretty important night overall, but also really great matches.
Yeah, just looking at it, this was, as a big Tomohiro Ishii fan, this was a great moment. And it's rough being an Ishii fan because, there's not a lot of highs that you get. And, of course, he knocked that asshole Jay White out of there, which was always awesome. Yeah, and you brought up the Ibushi and Taichi match, and it was, just such a unique match that I think you have to, kind of admire what they did there, and I'm sure you guys will get to it later, in one of the other categories. But this, I think solidified Taichi. I think for a lot of people, to where it's yes, you got to wrestle in the A block, but you also came to ball throughout most of the A block, and the Will Ospreay and Okada, kind of a preview match, and we've seen them do better, but this is also pretty good too. Of course, the One Nation Radio 2019 Stardom Wrestler of the Year, B. Priestley, on this show. Just a lot of yes, double checks. Just a very important night, and who can forget, Gabriel Kidd versus Yota Tsuji.
Now, here's an No, you know what? those Tsuji Kid and Yuya Uemura matches, even though they all blend into one another, they were fantastic. They like made the G1 opening. It was so good. But looking at night 11, now here's an interesting night. Most of the G1 nights, you had 4 really good matches, and then you kind of had the Yujiro match, which was still okay, but never at the top level. But night 11 was the night where he fought Ishii.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you wound up with
ain't no night off.
So you wound up with 5 really good matches. So while this show didn't peak maybe as high as say night 13 or night 17, you run it down and you're looking at Ishii Takahashi, Yujiro's best match of the tournament, Okada Jeff Cobb, the first time that Okada kind of started looking like Okada again in the tournament, Ospreay and Suzuki, where Ospreay had to go to war and survive Suzuki, and then the 2 main events, Jay White and Tai Chi, which actually really delivered despite the idea that it might have been a bunch of fuckery. It wasn't. And then Shingo Ibushi in the main event, which like really, really delivered. So like night 11 is super strong too.
3 first-time matches on that.
Yeah. And that was just kind of a big main event for Shingo, and being a Shingo fan, him beating last year's G1 champion, that was kind of a big deal there for Shingo. So that was just an overall really fun card. Then you look at night 5, which was another good card. You had in the main event the rematch of Okada and Jay White. You had Shingo and Ospreay in the semi-main, Ibushi and Ishii, Suzuki and Cobb, and then Tai Chi and Yujiro. So those last, the semi-main and main, those last few matches, it was Ibushi and Ishii was in the middle of the card, but yeah, overall it's another kind of solid card here.
The main event might not have delivered as high as some of the other matches in the card, but it was surprising that Jay White beat Okada again. But then when you look at Ibushi, Ishii, and Shingo Ospreay back to back, you're looking at 2 of the best matches of the year on like literally smack dab in the middle of the show, plus Suzuki Cobb. I mean, yeah, this is an incredible card. Like the A block just fucking ruled.
Yeah, it's a great night.
And then the one B block card that we had here from night 2, the first B block night. You had
this night was good.
Yeah, it was real good. You had Juice and Yoshi.
Throwing some scraps.
What'd you say, Rich?
I said throwing them some scraps.
You had on this night you had Juice and Yoshihashi. Yoshihashi, we talked about kind of having this kind of resurgent year, and it's really stepped his game up in this G1 tournament. Him and Juice had a great match here, and then the
return of Juice.
Yeah, that's right. It was Juice's because Juice was out with an injury, so he missed New Japan Strong. So it was the first time we've seen Juice since the pandemic. Then you had the Yano and Sonata match, which it was Yano and Sonata, that kind of count out finish there. Then you had Kenta and Goto rematch from Wrestle Kingdom, their never title match.
Hard hitting.
Yep. Then you had Sabre and Evil, which you had Sabre playing the babyface in this match and beating Evil on night 1. I think a lot of people really liked that.
Bro, it's one of Evil's best matches the entire year. Like this match and the Yoshihashi match were like his 2 best matches. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then the main event we talked about earlier in Match of the Year with Naito defeating Tanahashi in that classic traditional New Japan main event style matchup.
And I think the main reason this show gets on is like, okay, was it the same style where you had 4 or 5 bangers back to back to back like the A block? No, you didn't. But it felt closer to like a traditional New Japan style show where you had variety. A hard hitting match, a technical match, main event style, comedy, opener, blah, blah, blah. And it was all kind of on point. It was by far the best B block night of the entire tournament.
Seems like if this was a Rubik's Cube, everyone kind of found their natural dance partner on this night.
Yeah.
Rather than, us looking up and it's Goto versus like Yano or something, or Goto or Juice Robinson versus, Kenta or something like that. Like it's not like a natural match, but
I'm just guessing here, but like let's say this was May and we booked our way to a Dantaku that looked like this. I don't think that would be out of place at all.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you talk about natural dance partners, that's what this almost felt like. Was like this could have been a Dantaku, literally. Like a B or C level pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any night one? We talk about night one.
Night one, we didn't start with it. We got to talk about it.
So opening of the A block, we had in the main event the Wrestle Kingdom return match between Ibushi and Okada. Ibushi kind of getting his momentum back, getting the win back there from Okada. Not quite up to the Wrestle Kingdom standards or last year's G1 standards, but still a great main event. You had the Jay White and Shingo match, Suzuki and Ishii, Taichi and Cobb, and Ospreay and Yujiro, which was the first Ospreay match that we've seen in New Japan since the pandemic.
Another situation where a lot of these guys had natural dance partners and they all excelled against them in major ways. This was an incredible opening night as well, and just quality across the board.
Yeah, I remember this whole event, and the I think this was the first time we got crowds back, right? No, that was Dominion, the first time we got crowds back. But this was I remember seeing Will come out, and I was so happy for Will, knowing that he was able to kind of return back to wrestling, after essentially being in the UK, going crazy by himself, and knowing how much that guy loves to wrestle, how much wrestling keeps him sane. And he cut that promo after, and it was like, "I'm the best fucking wrestler in the world," and all that. So it just like fired us up for the G1. We didn't know he was going to turn heel at the end, but I'm not going to focus on that. I think we got a lot of things on this night to where we saw what was going to come from everyone. We saw that Yujiro wasn't going to mail that shit in. We saw Ospreay was going to, take his game to another level. White wasn't fucking around because him and Shingo had an awesome match on this night. And of course, Ishii and Suzuki are going to be Ishii and Suzuki. Okada, I remember the reaction at the time, like it was kind of a disappointment, but what are you going to do? It's not 5 stars every time you wrestle. So,
well, that is going to do it for Show of the Year.
Yep. So next up, we have the Jushin Thunder Liger Junior of the Year. Now, typically we would have more nominees for this award this year, but due to the pandemic and with Best of Super Juniors being postponed until after our voting period. So our eligibility for voting was November 15th, 2019 to November 15th of 2020. That is our calendar year for our voting. So Best of the Super Juniors missed the cut, so that'll be eligible for 2021 as well as Super J Cup. So 2021 will probably be the year of the junior. We'll have a lot of great junior candidates and junior match of the year candidates. But throughout this year, there were 5 juniors that really stood out, even with the pandemic, and made the most of their opportunities. So we had El Desperado, Hiromu Takahashi, Rocky Romero, Sho, and the Bone Soldier, and current IWGP Junior Champion Taiji Ishimori.
Yeah, you did a great job encapsulating kind of why it's just down to these 5 guys. One thing I'd like to point out, Desperado, Ishimori, Sho, Hiromu, those were the 4 juniors who were still in Japan domestically when they returned from their hiatus. And so, yeah, they'd been active prior to COVID, but when COVID restarted, those are the guys that were given opportunities to be in the New Japan Cup. They're also the same guys that were given opportunities to wrestle in the Never division against, like, say, Shingo. And so, we didn't have as many, say, great junior match opportunities for everybody, but we kind of factored in some of those open weight scenarios for some of these guys as well.
Right.
Yeah. Traditionally, when you think about New Japan, at least for me, you start thinking about the rich legacy of the junior division and everything going back to Super J Cup '94, and moving forward, from there with Liger carrying the flag for years and years, and Will, and different champions that have come and gone like Ricochet. But this wasn't one of those years, quite frankly, because the calendar determined it not to be. I feel like there are 2 guys that stand head and shoulders above everyone else when it came to their open weight work, and I look forward to next year being a more spirited, competitive competition for the Jushin Thunder Liger Jr. of the Year.
Well, a couple accolades just to kind of run over quickly, and then you guys can have a brief discussion about them. Hiromu Takahashi winning the IWGP Junior title at Wrestle Kingdom. He held that all the way till he lost it to Taiji Ishimori at Jingu Stadium Summer Struggle. Aside from that, you have Sho gaining his first victory over longtime rival Shingo in the New Japan Cup. There was also the junior tag team belts, which were held early in the year and gained by Roppongi 3K, which Sho also was part of that team. They defended those titles several times in great matches before Yo was injured in the New Japan Cup, leaving Sho to kind of work a more singles-based schedule this year. And then Desperado, aside from competing in open-weight matches, challenging for titles like we mentioned, him and partner Yoshinobu Kanemaru were able to not only win the vacant tag team titles, but also defeat longtime rivals in Bushi and Hiromu Takahashi in back-to-back matches in the title determinant match. So, those are kind of the accolades there. Last person, Rocky Romero, someone who was not here domestically after the COVID era, but really had some of the best work and best matches all year long in the States, in New Japan Strong, as well as Lions Break Collision, working with guys like Danny Limelight, Russ Taylor, Jay White. I mean, really holding it down stateside to the point where it was, even though he didn't win any titles, he wasn't even in any tournaments, it was sort of undeniable that Rocky had to be listed here for the amount of work he was doing not in Japan.
Right, Rocky was like one of the backbones of New Japan of America this year. Obviously in and out of the ring, but especially in ring, like you mentioned, and just some of the feature matches that he had on that program.
Oh, plus
good friend of the show, Rocky Romero.
Yes.
Plus the great match that him and Taguchi had at Road against Roppongi 3K, one of the best junior matches, probably the best junior match of the year. Junior tag team match, that is.
Yeah. Yeah, so overall, these guys had some really strong years. I mean, Hiromu Takahashi was, just great coming back from the neck injury from the beginning of the year all the way until now. Like you mentioned, Josh, getting that IWGP heavyweight title match against Evil. And, he's just so popular and seems to be kind of one of the pillars of the promotion right now.
He seems like a weapon of mass destruction that they're reluctant to deploy for whatever reason, just because they have to have him in this certain role just to hold this thing up from collapsing. But this is a heavyweight star. This is a IWGP champion one day.
Yeah, I think the junior division's at a point right now, especially with not being able to, bring in imports into the division like they normally do. You need a guy like Hiromu that can be the face of that division and be the star power. You look at the current Super Junior lineup, even though he's not the champion right now, he is in majority of the semi-mains and main events for this tour. So he is a star of the division with or without the title. And so definitely you kind of need him there until they can create a new star and elevate somebody else, until you can get some of the, you can get a Ryu Lee back. You can get, a TJP or ACH in for the tour. And so he's doing just great work kind of being that, face of the division.
Yeah, and you kind of have to
stunned. I don't see Master Wato here.
You also have to consider with Hiromu, with his open weight work, I mean, he defeated, 3 heavyweights back-to-back in Yano, Ishii, as well as Honma, which some of those names might not seem so inspiring to you, but put most juniors in that same situation. They're not going to beat 3 qualified heavyweights in a tournament situation like that, and then go life and death with Okada, and then not to mention the fantastic title defense he had against Dragon Lee, which he was in back-to-back 2 of the best junior matches of the year. And then, kind of consider the work that he did prior to Wrestle Kingdom, going back to December, the matches with Bushi, the match with Evil, where they were in the tag team against Will Ospreay and all that. That stuff also stands out as being really fantastic. I mean, Hiromu's had a banner year.
Yeah, then you look at a guy, the Bone Soldier, Taiji Ishimori, being the junior tag title match in the Dome, and then eventually winning the junior title from Hiromu at Jingu, and now kind of being the junior champion. It's a guy that he's just a guy that we kind of forget about him at times, but he's a great worker and just has some really dynamic matches, especially when he's given that time and the motivation to kind of go out there and have a great matchup. And so he's another guy that's kind of been kind of one of the pillars here of this division, especially during this pandemic time.
Yeah, the match with Hiromu at Jingu Stadium, it counts for both of them, but I guess it counts a little bit more even for Ishimori, just from the fact that he won the title from Ishimori in the midst of a really strong title reign. And we kind of thought at the time that they were kind of freeing up Hiromu to go into the G1, which definitely ended up not being the case. But Ishimori's had a strong title run since then, and he's kind of carried that into this year's Super Juniors. Did he have a title defense recently as well?
I don't think
at Power Struggle, or am I wrong?
No, he
hasn't had any title defenses.
Right.
Okay, so I'm wrong on that, but yeah, still a strong year. Still the tag team matches he had with ELP earlier in the year as well. But I think
Bring back Phantasmo.
The one guy that stands out for me aside from Hiromu really though is Sho.
Yeah, Sho is definitely making the most of the opportunity with Yo being injured. Like we mentioned, the rivalry with Shingo, upsetting Shingo in the New Japan Cup and then getting a never title shot, and that was kind of a big deal for him. And then, just all the single stuff he's been doing now. And, he was involved in KOPW as well, that feud with Sonata over submissions. And he got a lot of real chances to shine this year.
Oh, one thing, too, we forgot to mention, Hiromu had an IWGP double title shot against Evil.
It's amazing how we just forget all this. Evil or he's just omitted.
It was one of the more well-received Evil, probably the most well-received Evil title match of the entire year. And then also taking into consideration, Hiromu was slotted to have a special, anniversary match that got canceled with Naito, which was probably going to be a big deal at the time. But speaking of Desperado is very similar to Sho in that he's really made the most of his opportunities when given the chance, had some great matches in New Japan Cup. Him and Kanemaru really been holding down the junior tag team division. Kanemaru is injured now, so I don't even know what the future of that tag team title is currently. But Desperado, the match with Shingo, he's done quite a bit this year, and he's one of the few guys that kind of reminds me of Shingo last year, where he's sort of open weight, he's right on the threshold of really being a heavyweight, maybe being a junior. He's kind of in that area.
Yeah, I think that he should be allowed to have Doki step in for Kanemaru as his partner.
Oh my God, Freebirds rule, yes.
Doyukai.
But I think that is pretty much going to do it for the Junior of the Year talk. Do you want to move on to Tag Team of the Year?
Yeah, so Tag Team of the Year. We have the current IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions, the Dangerous Techers of Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi. We have the current Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Champions, El Esperado and Kanemaru, representing Sukigun. We have Finn Juice of David Finlay and Juice Robinson, Golden Ace, Kota Ibushi and Hiroshi Tanahashi. We have the current never openweight six-man tag team champions from Chaos, Hiroki Goto, Tomohiro Ishii, and Yoshihashi. And then the former IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions, the Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tanga Loa.
So on this list, you're looking at the four different teams that have held the IWGP Tag Team titles this year in Dangerous T, Finn Juice, Golden Ace, and GOD. Aside from that, you're looking at Desperado and Kanemaru as being probably the premier junior tag team this year. And then surprisingly, We haven't done this too often, but we've got a 6-man tag team here in Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi, being the only never 6-man openweight tag team champions on the list as well. In addition to that, you're also looking at Finjuice being last year's World Tag League winners, and Kanemaru and Desperado being this year's iteration of the Junior Tag Team Tournament winners. Whatever, I don't even know what the name of that tournament was, but they won a Junior Tag Team Tournament.
It didn't have a name. It was just on road.
Road.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there was a tournament for those vacant titles. They won them, and then there was a tournament for the vacant 6-man titles, and Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi won those as well. So that's kind of the deal.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, man. So y'all saying I get to vote for Tomohiro Ishii again in another category here?
And you know what? He might win it, man.
Yeah, man. The never openweight 6-man titles from the beginning of the year have just been having some great matches. You look back to the beginning of the year of LIJ all the way to now. It's just been one of those titles, and normally it's kind of, titles that are forgotten about, not really kind of great standout matches, but especially when you get to this never 6-man tournament and you get to the Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi unit, and they're winning the titles and defending the titles, those guys are going out there and just having some really great matches, and they're main eventing shows with these 6-man titles and having some compelling matchups, against like Suzuki-gun and the Chaos team. I think it was Okada, Yano, and Sho they defended against, and just had some really great defenses.
Yeah, the team they had 2 matches back-to-back against the other Chaos team that were both awesome. They had a match against Golden Ace and Wato. That was awesome. Then they had the match against Dangerous Tekkers and Doki, which is like also awesome. You're talking about like 4 of the best tag team matches this year, all Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi. It's kind of a sleeper pick, but like they're one of the best tag teams this year anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Like you start thinking about this team and these 3 guys, it is nothing but hard work, picking up their lunch pail, the hard hat. Like this is that team. If you like, dudes that are gonna go ahead and lay it on the line, are always gonna work hard. I can see Goto cutting a promo being like, "Hard times is when I'm man." Yeah.
You don't know hot times, Daddy.
And while these guys weren't able to find success elsewhere, they were able to come together and find success and rule this division.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Goto and Ishii helping Yoshihashi win his first ever titles in New Japan. So that title win was kind of a special moment there.
Yeah, as well, they've kind of paired up Goto and Yoshihashi, and they've also had some other tag team matches outside of this. I don't know how much of that you want to throw into it. Plus, Goto and Ishii earlier in the year had a banger against Evil and Shingo at New Year's Dash, one of the best tag team matches of the year. So, I mean, if you're kind of working that logic, I mean, I don't know. It kind of depends how you want to play with those rules. Do we want to talk about these 4 IWGP tag teams, heavyweight tag teams?
Yeah, I think that they all kind of flow together. So you start at the beginning of the year. You have the World Tag League winners, Finjuice, challenging GOD, the current champion at the time, for the heavyweight tag team titles. Kind of a big deal there. Finjuice, kind of a fresh team, first time winning the tag league, kind of coming in as the underdog baby faces against the dominant GOD duo there, the Sons of Haku. And kind of a big moment there for Finjuice, winning their first tag titles at Wrestle Kingdom. And then that feud kind of spills over into New Beginning. We saw some of that here in Tampa and then here in the States with Finjuice and GOD. And at the end of that tour, GOD ends up getting the titles back from Finjuice in kind of a short title reign there, which leads to Golden Ace getting to challenge GOD and win the titles from them.
Yep.
And then after Golden Ace wins the titles from GOD, you have Dangerous Tekkers kind of making their name, attacking Golden Ace after that, and that's kind of the pillar feud of the division of Golden Ace and Dangerous Tekkers. Started pre-pandemic, and then we came back from the pandemic. That was kind of the major tag title feud.
I feel like they have 5,000 matches with each other.
And you know what's funny? It feels that way, but the reality is, in terms of just straight tag matches, 2. They had the match at Dominion, and then they had the match at Jingu Stadium. That was it. But they had so many multi-man matches that involved both of those teams, plus all the singles matches that they had against one another in the New Japan Cup and the G1, that it feels more than it actually was. But Jeremy's right. It was the predominant feud that sort of dominated the entire summer, most of the year, in fact. One thing about Dangerous Tekkers, although Finjuice was the team that won last year's World Tag League, and keep in mind, Tag League is part of the voting period, Dangerous Tekkers were far and away the MVPs of the actual tournament when it came to in-ring work. The standout match would be the match they had with Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer. You kind of couple that with some of the other great matches they had this year, like the one with Ospreay and Okada at New Beginning, the ones that they had with the Golden Ace, the title defenses that they've had since then, including the one recently again with Goto and Yoshihashi. It's going to be hard for people not to vote for Dangerous T this year, plus the promo work, plus the angles. They got a lot going for them.
Yeah, solid tag team here.
I think also, there could be some votes getting split on the fact that Golden Ace is so popular. I mean, it's Tanahashi and Ibushi, and we've seen many times where, the tag team division isn't as paid. Like, people don't pay as much attention to it as some of the other awards that we've had. We've seen times where, I remember the first year we had this, War Machine probably should have been the tag team of the year, but they got outvoted by the Young Bucks, who had barely been in the company that year and weren't actually the tag team of the year that year. Then the next year, they should have been the tag team of the year, and guess what? The Golden Lovers beat them. So,
a lot of 5-star matches to compete with.
It is. And all these and you know what? Golden Ace is a fantastic team. I wouldn't be surprised if they win, but I'm wondering how much the popularity of Golden Ace is going to play into the votes, because it's Ibushi and Tanahashi, and who's not going to vote for them,
Right.
I'm voting for the Bucks.
Last two teams, you got GOD holding it down in New Japan of America. Literally, the main reason we kept them on here, although they had a strong early part of the year, they were dominant every week on Strong, every week, like literally beating all the best tag teams that were put in front of them. And since they've come back, they've been just doing the same thing. So, I mean, hard to keep them off with the fact that they were IWGP champions. They had a really strong tag league last year, and then have just dominated in America during the entire pandemic era.
Right, and GOD is just one of those, again, kind of foundations of the tag division the last several years. That kind of that one team, that constant. They're always there, and they've been getting better and having some really good matches. Especially that you look back to that Wrestle Kingdom match with Finjuice was really good. And then, like you mentioned, every week on Strong, whether in singles or in tag matches, there's been a lot of GOD tags and Bullet Club multi-man tags. GOD has been really, really dominant there.
So are we at the point in the cycle to where we start trying to talk ourselves into thinking Tama Tonga should do some singles matches again?
We're getting close, because he's looking like a star right now.
Look, because it's just like a circle. We keep going in, and then eventually be like, oh, hell no. Put him back in the team.
Time is an infinite circle, Rich.
Honestly, I'm to the point.
Yeah.
I'm starting a new circle. It should Tangaloa.
Tangaloa needs...
Look, seriously, this guy, I watch him, I'm like, okay, he kind of low-key raw now.
We're at the point where we think
trying to trick you.
Tangaloa needs to be singles with his heater, Tama Tonga.
See?
Actually, I'm ready for GOD to be Tama Tonga and Hikuleo, and free that man Tangaloa to be singles,
Bring that man back. They start a new unit.
Last team, we got Desperado Kanemaru, as we mentioned, regained the junior tag team titles. won the tag team tournament, beat almost every team in the division, just dominance. And they were dominant, for years past. They've continued that trend in 2020. It looks like they're, barring injury, they were probably going to continue that, trend next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, not much more to add there. I mean, it's Desperado Kanemaru. Much like GOD, they are a constant and foundation of the junior tag division, and a team that can always be there, and a team you can normally kind of count on and throw them in there. Obviously, they're always feuding with like Roppongi 3K, and they're great kind of heels to go against any kind of babyface team that you throw in that junior tag division.
Well, let's go through this quickly. We got the Karl Gotch Strong Style Award. This is the award for the most strong style centric wrestler of the year. And your nominees are Kota Ibushi, Tomohiro Ishii, Yuji Nagata, Minoru Suzuki, Taichi, and Shingo Takagi.
So, how many years does Tomohiro Ishii have to win in a row? Does Ishii have to win this award so we can even at least get a Karl Gotch / Tomohiro Ishii Strong Style award? Or can we just flat out replace that old dude? Because I said it last year, I'm going to say it every year. We don't even know who the fuck that is no more. This is Ishii. I kid, no disrespect to Karl Gotch, but hey, I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. There's a lot
Karl
of
Gotch,
great.
the god of wrestling.
Yeah, shit. You asked me who I got between Gotch and Ishii. Shit, the Stone Pit Bulls. Like, yeah. Was Karl Gotch one of the greatest wrestlers in the world for decades straight? Maybe he was. However, yeah, I'll leave it there. Had to do my annual spiel for Ishii.
This man's ridiculous.
I could be down with adding a slash in there. Karl Gotch / Tomohiro Ishii.
Look, Gato won't let him win nothing. Why y'all won't let him win nothing?
I don't know that he's won it that many times for us. Did Shibata win it the first year?
Yeah, I think Shibata won it the first year, but I think Ishii's won it every year since then.
Well,
sympathy votes.
Oh my god, if he wins it this year, then maybe I'll consider it.
Oh man!
Look, y'all know what y'all voting for.
Oh my god! All right, let's get to this.
So yeah, I mean, all of these guys on this list here were featured in some of the most violent, brutal, strong, hard-hitting matches of the year, which we'll touch on when we get a strong style match of the year. But literally every single one of these guys has a very strong, literally strong case to win the strong style award.
Yeah, I just looked at the records. Shibata beat Ishii the first year by literally 12 points, and every year since then it's been landslide for Ishii. But I think that might be challenged this year. To be honest with you, we've got some really strong candidates. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Yuji Nagata from WCW.
Yes.
Nagata, he had a resurgent year here, with the pandemic. He was one of the guys that had to kind of call on for New Japan Cup and to be featured on some of these bigger shows. So going in there, having that banger with Minoru Suzuki in the opening round of the New Japan Cup, which is literally one of the most hard-hitting and violent matches of the year, and getting the upset on Suzuki to go on to have a great match with Okada. And then they had a Suzuki rematch on the Summer Struggle Tour. And then also, you look at all of the matches that he had with the Young Lions and the tag matches he had with Young Lions, that he'd be slapping the crap out them boys. And so, yeah, Nagata has had a really good year.
Yeah,
I feel
Nagata's always been a oh, God.
No, go ahead. You've got other thoughts about Nagata. I was going to move on.
Yeah, I was going to say Nagata's mind you, they basically wound this guy down in 2017 they snap their fingers and like, yo, we need you. And he's like, okay, because all I do is stay in shape and ready at any time. So, he just walked in there and did him.
Yeah, it's going to come as no surprise. Everybody that's on this list, we're going to say the same thing. Like, they'll beat the shit out of people, and they do, and they're great at it. And this might actually be the most diversified year for this award that we've ever had, because of when we talked about how this year wasn't the junior year, this became the strong style year by default, because that's what most of these empty arena COVID era matches really just became strong style fights, especially in the G1. And I mean, I'm really torn. I think someone who really is going to give Ishii a run for his money when it comes to the Karl Gotch Award this year, Shingo Takagi. I mean, hard-hitting fight after hard-hitting fight. Juniors, heavyweights, doesn't fucking matter. He beat the shit out of people all year long. Like, it doesn't matter if your name's Okada or if your name's Sho. He's going to beat the fuck out of you.
So you're saying Shingo Takagi is a version of the Can Man. Anyone can get it.
Exactly. Another guy, Tai Chi is a guy who's really continues to step his game up. And this year, man, especially you also get his G1. And obviously we talked about the Ibushi match where they're kicking each other for 17 minutes. And just some of the other matches that he's had this year. Like, he's really stepped it up. And I mean, that dangerous backdrop driver he does, and the axe boomba and all the kicks. Yeah, man.
Bro, the Kawada kicks, the axe boomba, the plum clutch. Like, there's so much that he's doing right now.
You could talk me into Tai Chi being the IWGP champion at some point.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but I do feel I feel like this podcast has been ahead on Tai Chi for quite a while now. I remember getting blasted last year when I suggested that maybe he could beat Jon Moxley in the G1, and everybody in our group chat was freaking out. But I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds anymore. Now that people can see what we've known about this guy for a while now.
Yeah, definitely solidified himself this year.
I mean, since we're on the topic, let's talk about Tomohiro Ishii. I mean, we talked about naming the award after him. We already talked about how great his matches were this year. I mean, bro, the headbutts, the throat chops, the elbows, the cells, the enziguris, the dives.
I want to talk about one moment that I'm sure a lot of people don't remember, but I remember I gave like a glowing review to One Nation Radio. New Japan Road, Tomohiro Ishii versus Shingo Takagi. Not the greatest match they've ever had. Still a phenomenal match. Tomohiro Ishii loses, but then he gets up by himself and walks out under his own power, and you just see the look on his face. So inspirational, so just like gut-wrenching, and just like you feel everything for this guy, and he gives it to you. Like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, hell, you can skip the match, go load it up, watch the 3 count, and then watch him walk out the arena. You tell me that's not a champion.
My favorite part of it wasn't when he walked out on his own recognizance. My favorite part was when he was still out of it, thought the match was still going. He's on his back, and he tries to attack that man, and he's throwing punches and like.
Yeah,
like the match is over.
It's over,
bro.
Man.
Yeah, that was awesome. Definitely kind of add some realism to it, because you see that sometimes in MMA where a guy gets knocked out and then comes back to it real quick and thinks the fight's still going on and will try and get some shots in, and so that's exactly what happened here. And yeah, I mean, we don't even really need to go on and explain why Ishii is on here. I mean, if you're a fan of New Japan, you know why Ishii is on here and the incredible year he's had. And somebody he tangled with this year was Minoru Suzuki. Suzuki, again, is always a candidate for this award. We talked about the match with Nagata. That was really brutal. They had 2 matches this year. Suzuki's literally had matches with everybody on this list this year, and all of them were very hard-hitting, very brutal. The chops, his his evil laughter and absorbing pain, and his facial expressions, and yeah, Suzuki's the man.
Almost everybody on this list, their most brutal match this year was with Suzuki. Almost all of them. Just saying.
Yeah.
But then let's talk about Kota Ibushi, someone who, kind of a hybrid wrestler. He made this list for the first time, or, was a candidate for the first time for the Strong Style Award last year. But I feel like this year, even more so than ever, he is a really strong candidate to win this thing based off the body of work that he put out this year.
Go ahead, Rich.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say he's the most high-profile guy if you look at it going into next year out of everyone on this list, and what he does is probably going to resonate a little more. I think people are noticing now that his style change lends itself to, the strong style work because, like, they're not asking him to do anything athletic. It's like, hey, can you just take it? And we know this man's a psycho, so of course he can take it. And dish it.
Right, I mean,
that's a great way to put it.
Diving into his kickboxing background, MMA background, his striking ability and stuff like that. And so, again, like we mentioned, Ibushi, one of the most versatile wrestlers on the roster, and he definitely adapts well to this strong style scenario here.
I got a prediction right now. Someone from the Empire will be on this list next year, and I don't know which of the three it's going to be. I don't know if it's Cobb. I don't know if it's Oka. I don't know if it's going to be Ospreay. It could be literally any one of those three with the way that they're working right now. But I'm telling you, come 2020, someone from the Empire is going to be on that list. Just saying right now.
I can see that.
So let's talk about Feud of the Year.
Yep, so our Feud of the Year candidates, we have Jay White versus Kota Ibushi, Kenta versus Naito, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Will Ospreay, Tomohiro Ishii versus Shingo, Nagata versus Minoru Suzuki, Sho versus Shingo, Evil versus LIJ, Golden Ace versus Dangerous Tekkers, and Shingo versus Suzuki, and then Yumura versus Tsuji versus Kid.
In the interest of time, I think each one of us should just take a subject one at a time, give a real brief rundown, and then move on.
All right. How about you start us off, young boy?
And actually, let's let Rich start it off.
All right.
I'm going to keep it a buck. I don't like a lot of the feuds on this list, and I think it's a reflection of what Gato has done a lot of the year, but there are a couple shining spots that are on this list. For me, it immediately jumps out is Shingo and Ishii. You start looking at Golden Aces and Dangerous Tekkers, what they actually produce in the ring. Shingo and Suzuki, Nagata Suzuki. From there, it's just like a lot of questionable stuff. And
you said you don't like it, but you named half the list.
No. Like, those are the ones I like. Now let's get to what I didn't like is the other half of the list. And I think what is actually going to be reflected in the voting is the ones that I did like. They weren't the highest pushed, high profile things here, but the other ones were. So it's going to, I feel like it's going to be very, a lot of missteps were made at the top this year, and this is a reflection of that. Like, Okada's not on here. Like, how?
Bushi's
not on here. Or, yeah, he does. Bushi is on there, sorry. Naito's holding on with a thread on this thing. It's not inspiring.
All right, let's do this then. Me and Jeremy will go back and forth giving brief rundowns, and you can pepper in shit.
Sure.
I'll start it off. I'll start off with Yumura, Tsuji, and Kid. So this is a feud that has kind of run all throughout the year. It's not uncommon to see young lions fighting one another in tag team matches and singles matches throughout the year, but this felt like a more focused thing than ever before, especially during the G1 when we sort of had the mini C-block tournament between these three guys, and they all got an opportunity to work in front of these crowds in an opening match capacity against each other in a round-robin sort of scenario, and they just put on some of the best, most consistent junior matches we've seen all year, and it was so focused and tailored in on these three guys specifically that we just had to like put this this young lion feud on the docket. Like, were there any match of the year candidates? No, but when you're talking about the best matches between three guys, I mean, this is the best series of matches between three guys in the company all year long. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and this won't be the first time that we put a Young Lion feud on here. In 2018, we did have Tsuji and Yamura were on there again. That's kind of when they came into the company and kickstarted their feud. So we have highlighted Young Lion rivalries in this category in the past, and again, especially like you mentioned with their work in the C block this year in the G1, all three of these guys, all of them are I know it's a work, but they are all three trying to kind of outwork each other and trying to earn that kind of spot and work towards who's gonna graduate first.
Absolutely, Jeremy. What's something else that stands out for you?
One that I wanted to highlight was Golden Ace versus Dangerous Techers. Like Rich mentioned, this is kind of a year where some of the heavyweight feuds weren't really there, but one of the feuds that were there was the tag title feud, and having this mega team of Kota Ibushi and Hiroshi Tanahashi come together. Everybody's been saying, put some focus on the tag division, put some of these guys that are not in the title picture in the moment, stick them together, and let's have some super teams. And that's essentially what we got here. Two kind of super teams here with Tanahashi and Ibushi, and then Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi kind of solidifying themselves as a tag team here. And with this feud kickstarting, we had Golden Ace winning the tag titles at the beginning of the year, defeating GOD, which then immediately led into this feud. Dangerous Techers, they laid them out there at New Japan Road and kind of called their shot. And then we had the pandemic, and they came back and kind of kickstarted things there. And with this feud, it had a lot of layers to this feud. We had the whole, Dangerous Techers, they win the titles at Dominion, and then they're trying to get Ibushi to join Suzuki-gun and to turn his back on Tanahashi. We had all those segments there where Ibushi wouldn't help Tanahashi and was kind of debating it, and all of the promos between Tanahashi and Tanahashi feeling he was letting Ibushi down, and Ibushi wanted to be a god, and all this leading to the Jingu rematch where everybody thought Golden Ace was going to get the belts back, but Dangerous Techers once again defeated them and kind of put the nail in the coffin for that team.
Another one to throw out there, Sabre versus Ospreay. Now, this is one that I think some people might look at it and kind of say, well, they had the one match that was really good at New Beginning, but there's a lot of, feuds that had one match. Why are they not listed here? Why is Jon Moxley and Minoru Suzuki not here? Something of that nature, But the difference with Sabre and Ospreay versus some of those other great one-match feuds is that it really wasn't just one match. They also had the rematch just a week or two later in Rev Pro, which, granted, is not New Japan, but it is part of the kayfabe of the company. The Rev Pro title is almost treated as like a secondary title or a third-tier title in New Japan at this point anyways. And it was also featured on New Japan World, so it was easily watchable by most, people that were in the, that have subscriptions. But beyond that, the continuing feud between the two of them all throughout the New Beginning tour, including, like Jeremy mentioned earlier, the really fantastic 5-on-5 elimination match that resulted in Ospreay defeating Sabre so that he could gain his title opportunity shot in Rev Pro. When you kind of couple the fact that those were two of the best matches of the year anywhere in the world, plus the great multi-man matches that kind of surrounded it, Sabre Ospreay has to be in play as one of the best feuds of the entire year.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a dark horse pick right there. So do you want to highlight anything else, or you want to move on to the next category?
Well, I mean, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Evil and LIJ. Rich is laughing, but like, let's keep it a buck. This is the biggest feud of the entire year in the company. Now, was the match quality as good as some of these other feuds? No, it wasn't. But when you're talking about Evil versus LIJ, you're not just talking about Evil against Naito. You're talking about Evil against Naito and Hiromu and Sonata and all the multi-matches involving Bushi. And it's the story that has dominated the entire year. And Feud of the Year is not, like we mentioned earlier, we don't have strict criteria. It's not just what is the best wrestling matches of the year. Last year's Feud of the Year winner was Suzuki and Liger, which was, one match followed by a bunch of other, run-ins and angles and things like that. It wasn't strictly the best matches, which probably would have been, Naito and Ibushi?
Yeah.
Last year? So but other years we've had like Okada and Omega win, obviously. So, it kind of depends. I don't know that this will win, but I mean, there is a chance that it does get quite a few votes because it's been the predominant, it's what's dominated both top titles in the company, most of the tournaments, biggest angles of the year. It's a big deal.
So, like, Evil versus Naito was so bad, we had to absorb the rest of LIJ to cover this. This is what this sounds like. 4 IWGP title matches, not enough to make it on.
That's true. We definitely
damning.
We definitely would not have nominated just Evil and Naito, but Evil versus LIJ for sure we will.
Look, just wanted it out there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're a fan of this show, you know our thoughts on the Evil vs. Naito matches and feuds, and like we mentioned, we just couldn't put that standalone. But if we incorporate the whole LIJ feud from the turn, him how he treated Sonata in New Japan Cup, leading to the Okada match and where he turns and joins Bullet Club, and leading to the whole Naito series, the match with Hiromu, which was one of his better title defenses. And the multi-man tags were not bad. Most of the multi-mans are better than his singles matches. So if you incorporate the whole feud, obviously there's tons of promos, angles. We had their emergence of Dick Togo, new characters and stuff like that. Like, this feud did a lot as far as story progression.
I was just going to ask, can we just change it to Evil and Dick Togo versus LIJ? And the Road Wire.
And ending this section, you look at some of the feuds that Rich mentioned initially. Shingo Suzuki, 3 of the best matches of the entire year. Probably the best collection of matches in a feud. Ishii Shingo back-to-back great matches. Sho Shingo, same thing, plus the long storied history between the two of them, and the redemption of Sho finally getting his big singles victory over Shingo, Nagata Suzuki, Kenta Naito, White Ibushi. I mean, you've got a lot of really great in-ring work between all these different feuds here for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely some solid feuds here. Obviously not, maybe there's no Omega Okada on here, but there's still a lot of great feuds in a kind of a down year, especially with the pandemic going on.
So next we have the Big Van Vader Gaijin of the Year. It is not the Kenny Omega Gaijin of the Year award, Rich Latta.
Should be, but should be.
The Big Van Vader Gaijin of the Year. This is where we award the most outstanding foreigner in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And our category nominees this year are FinJuice, the Gorillas of Destiny, Jeff Cobb, Will Ospreay, and finally the Switch King, Jay White.
Yeah, much like 2020 was a down year for the juniors, it's also a down year for the Gaijins because of the pandemic and a lot of guys not being able to get back in. One of the things that kind of helped out the Gaijins this year was New Japan Strong and the starting of that show, which kind of helped. And then obviously some of these Gaijins were able to get back into the country in time for G1, which kind of helped some of their cases here. When you look at a guy like Switchblade Jay White, who was a part of Double Gold Dash at the beginning of the year. He lost to Naito, but then he defeated Kota Ibushi, and then kind of went on in the year and came back, had a good G1. He now has the briefcase. He was one of the featured guys on New Japan Strong with the whole Bullet Club war against Hontai. So definitely Jay, as kind of one of the top pillars of the company, was a Gaijin that definitely stood out this year.
Yeah, and fortunately, we did a great job kind of showcasing FinJuice, GOD, Will Ospreay, and Jay White earlier when we talked about Tag Team and Wrestler of the Year. The one guy that we haven't really talked a lot about is Jeff Cobb. And, Jeff Cobb has kind of been sort of an anomaly in the company where it's like, is he signed? Is he not signed? He's here part-time. He's doing tours. And year after year, he's kind of gained more of a foothold as far as his position in the company, and now he's like apparently officially signed. And like you mentioned, Jeremy, with New Japan Strong, he did a lot of work for the company in America. He did like the New Japan, the New Beginning tours early in the year. He did work on both Lions Break Collision as well as Strong Plus, working the G1, having a very, I would say, a breakout G1 for him at least, and then joining the Empire at the end of the year. So I mean, Jeff Cobb is really sort of coming to his own as well within the company.
Hey, a very thin Gaijin of the Year category. So I guess the Pure Elitas got what they want. You got New Japan just, how you want it. So, not really adding a bunch of flavor to it, But yeah, like you guys said, all these guys, it was tough for them to get over there. I would question why Moxley, couldn't have stolen a spot here, but I understand why you didn't. Just due to his popularity and Paul's. Yeah, I was gonna say because he has like he has like a tour there. He has 2 Wrestle Kingdom matches. He had the match with Suzuki there, and I think he had a big tag team match with Okada if I'm not mistaken. So. I just don't know if it's enough.
That's what we ultimately felt like. We kind of considered Mox, and we came to the conclusion we're like, you know what, 5 matches this year that might qualify him for some of these other awards, and he is listed on some of these awards. But for Gaijin of the Year, meaning like the top foreigner in the company who represents the company, I mean, he's almost at this point truly an AEW guy. So we just didn't feel like with 5 matches and just strictly 1 tour it was really enough. But I mean, we weren't far off from putting him on here. You're not like wrong necessarily.
Right.
Yeah. This is a 2-horse race. Like it's gonna be and it's ironic. It feels like these guys are going in opposite directions character wise. Which I don't know if
You mean,
if it's me.
You mean Juice or Finn Juice and God? Because yeah.
Oh, who else do you think I would be referring to? But seriously, Osprey and White. It's like what flavor do you like? Out of those 2, I think the status quo was where it's at, but they're heading in different directions possibly.
Yeah, I mean, Jay and Ospreay are 2 guys that have always kind of been opposite of each other and have had a feud ongoing here. And I think they're very interesting now that Ospreay is also a heel now and running his own faction in Empire. And there's been a lot of rumors of whether or not Jay would turn face with the whole evil fall from Bullet Club, and that is yet to be seen. And it could happen down the line, but they're definitely 2 kind of career rivals and have kind of been going back and forth with each other. And are probably going to be the guys that majority of the first place votes get split between here.
One last determinant factor, I don't know how much this will play into the voting, but if you want to look at the representation these guys have had outside of New Japan, meaning like their work abroad, I think you have to kind of give the edge to Jeff Cobb and Will Ospreay, as they both did quite a bit of work outside. Cobb wrestling all over the world, showing up on AEW, working for Ring of Honor, working in OTT, basically everywhere. And then Ospreay having fewer excursion matches than he normally does, but his match in Australia, his match in the UK, the match he had with B. Priestley for Wrestle Talk when the
yes.
When COVID first happened. I mean, that's another kind of factor there, because when we talk about Gaijin, we're talking about foreigner. And these foreigner wrestlers oftentimes will work outside and kind of represent the company. And I think that's another thing to sort of just kind of keep in mind as well.
Well, I think from there we can move on to the next category. We have Faction of the Year. And so our nominees, we have the Bullet Club.
Hold on. Before you mention it, Rich, do you want us to name this the LIJ Faction of the Year award? Because they've won it every single year since we started.
I mean, if you want to reward, them, go ahead. I mean, they look, get more stuff that you really ain't, really earn, or it don't quite resonate. I mean, that's the LIJ way, So, hey, That's on you.
Oh my gosh. So the nominees for Faction of the Year, the Bullet Club, Chaos, Hontai, LIJ, and Suzuki-gun.
Hey, man, sign me up for Suzuki-gun on the low out here, because Bullet Club, disaster. Chaos, they barely even know each other. Hontai.
Whoa. Hold on, calm down. I'm with you on Bullet Club and Chaos, but let's not talk shit about Hontai. Hantai's been fucking raw this year. I voted for Hontai. Well, I told you. I did vote for them. I'm not saying which place I put them in, but I put them in one of the three.
Yeah, I mean, with the factions, we normally have, this is pretty much the same list that we have every year. Also, the one kind of difference here is normally we would have Taguchi Japan in that Hontai spot.
Fuck all that.
But we just went with overall Hontai. I mean, that's the real unit, and that's kind of, I mean, Taguchi Japan really
Taguchi Japan seems done.
Yeah.
Notice there was no Empire here, obviously. They just got started, so we didn't feel like it was fair to put them on, but maybe next year. And who knows? I have a feeling we might not even be seeing Chaos next year. This might be the last time we see Chaos. Who knows what's going to happen with Bullet Club going forward? I mean, transitional year, but very interesting between these 5 groups here. Any chance LIJ doesn't win it again, especially with the break with Evil and everything?
I think they're going to dominate this because, if it's one thing LIJ fans are used to doing is fan voting for stuff. So,
well, they win the majority of all the votes, which would mean more than just diehard LIJ fans are voting for them. Almost every year they get almost all the votes.
Yeah, I think especially this year, looking at these units, like LIJ is the one unit that's really featured together. They team a lot together. They have the run-ins together. They kind of, I don't know, out of all these factions, they feel like a real kind of, faction that you would think of, or some of these other, like a Chaos kind of feels like an MMA team, like, or you represent Chaos, but, not necessarily always, like, in their space or being together with them. Also, they have different, also the 6-man units, some of the tag units that they've had this year, but I feel like LIJ is even with Evil leaving, is still like probably the strongest unit on here.
These dudes barely save each other.
Well, Rich was kind of right in the fact that, like, you got Suzuki-gun, which is a strong candidate. I mean, we've seen this year, the pictures with Suzuki holding the Never Belt, and then, Kanemaru and Desperado holding the junior titles, and then Dangerous T holding the heavyweight belts. And so, I mean, they've won quite a few titles, been pretty dominant throughout the year. So I actually could see them getting quite a few votes as well. Yeah, I gotta call spade a spade. I just don't see Bullet Club or Chaos doing very well this year. I could be wrong on that. It feels like it's a 3-way race between Hontai, LIJ, and Suzuki-gun.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it here. I don't think there's much really. We've talked about a lot of the key guys in all these factions. You know which factions.
We have a hotly contested next subject, the Most Improved Award. And our nominees are Jeff Cobb, Doki, Sho, Taichi, Yoshi-Hashi, and then the Young Lions, Yota Tsuji and Yuya Uemura.
Rich, any of these names standing out to you?
There are people that will argue Taichi there's not been much improvement. There are people that would say Taichi was already great. Like there is a Dangerous T, Lord Taichi section out there. I'm very aware of. But for me, I completely look at Taichi as a completely different guy. Doki, just nothing but positive things coming from this guy. You got little kids dressing up like him. He's getting over. But if you don't start talking about Yoshi-Hashi in the G1, what he did every day, there's just the Yoshi, I ain't no punk bitch Hashi. Like, you got to respect that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think great cases for all three of those guys. Yoshi-Hashi winning his first title, Doki starting to win matches. Here's the thing with Taichi. You're absolutely right. Taichi's always been great, but, a year or two ago, we put Zack Sabre on our most improved list, and people were like, crying about it, being like, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. How much could he improve? The most improved award is not strictly about how much better of a worker they become, because the reality is everybody who's in New Japan, top to bottom, are already great workers. This award is oftentimes also about their placement within the company. If we see an emphasis in how they're pushed, how they're booked, the opportunities they are given, and what they make of those opportunities, we will recognize it. And that's what we kind of saw with Taichi. Not only has he been working better, but he also has maximized his opportunities to showcase himself in a better light than he did, say, 3 years ago.
Right, had a big match with Okada on the New Beginning tour, and obviously this run with Dangerous Techers as tag team champions, his G1 this year. Yeah, definitely calling for him to be in this category.
I think two other standouts. You got Sho, like we've mentioned so many times. I mean, I can't understate how big that win over Shingo was, but his work as a singles has been just really, really awesome. The fact that him and Yo finally defended the junior titles for the first time successfully ever in their time in the company was a big deal. But him really kind of becoming his own man and stepping out on his own, we've seen shadows of it, but really the fulfillment of it this year, that's been a big deal. And then, like we talked about in the previous section, Jeff Cobb really coming into his own within the company as well in a major way, especially during the G1.
Yeah, and for me, I just want to throw some more love towards Doki. He is one of the guys that I voted for this category. I'm not going to say which place. But yeah, this is a guy that when he came in last year, me, along with several others, were very down on him. But he's shown that he's a great worker. He's turned things around, and it's been really having some great matches and doing some great work. And he's one of the standouts right now in the junior division.
Hey, if you're going to throw more love on him, I'm going to throw more love on Yoshihashi. This is a guy that I literally said I would never support in any way, and then I was rooting for the guy when he won his title. and I haven't stopped rooting for him since. And you know what? He even kind of fixed the shitty butterfly lock. It's still shitty, but he added a little key lock to it, so it's gotten better.
Yeah.
Oh, and if Tanahashi wasn't in that B block, he would have been the MVP.
True. All right. So, anything else there on most improved?
Tsuji and Yamura just continue to get better year after year. They're like a fine wine. I can't wait to see what happens when they finally do go on their excursions and come back, if they ever do. But, man, they're fucking awesome. Both of them.
Yeah, great young lions. So that takes us to the next category, and a new category that we created for 2020, and that is the New Japan of America MVP. So for this category, we have nominated ACH, Clark Connors, Danny Limelight, Jay White, Jeff Cobb, Karl Fredericks, Kenta, Rocky Romero, and the great TJP.
The great TJP.
Just a heads up, guys. Are you guys going in a different order?
I think Jeremy's going in a little bit different order because I'm also looking at the Google Doc, and I've got
same. I thought it was Newcomer of the Year next, but that's okay.
Me too. So, but I just was gonna kayfabe it, you know.
My bad. I was looking at
I'm shattering the fourth wall, exposing the business.
Kayfabe.
Yeah, I was looking at my Excel doc that we copied over into the other Google Doc.
Gotcha. That's fine. But as far as this category here, MVP of America, I mean, this kind of encompasses both the New Japan of America tours that we saw starting in February with the New Japan or with the New Beginning in America tour, kind of covers over into the Lions Break Collision show, and then culminates with Strong. And, all of these guys here, major players in most of those capacities this year.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys just have we're kind of the standouts here on Strong. With this kind of new programming, kind of be forcing in this empty arena studio environment. These were the guys that stand out. One of the guys that I'll just shout out real quick is the Alpha Wolf, Karl Fredericks. This was a guy who graduated from being a young lion on this program on New Japan Strong. He was featured heavily on Lions Break Collision with that feud with Jeff Cobb, and then just kind of being a kind of standout guy in the rivalry with Bull Club on this show, and cutting a lot of promos. He's the one guy that there's kind of been a lot of character progression with, and somebody that they've kind of built around for New Japan of America.
Yeah, I think you got some different tiers here, and I can kind of simplify. So you got Fredericks and Connors sort of being like your LA Dojo representatives. Like you mentioned, Fredericks sort of graduating, but still the two of them representing the LA Dojo. Aside from that, you've got like your major stars in Jay White, Rocky Romero, Kenta, and Jeff Cobb, sort of the known commodities who work both in Japan but also here in the States and sort of been like the anchors of this new project. Then you've got a third group of guys, which are like TJP, ACH, and they're sort of like also, they're like the indie guys. They're like known commodities. They've been in New Japan before. They're not currently like regular stars over in Japan necessarily, but they're the ones who are like showing up on the Strong show and just having great matches. And then the final, group I would call is like your California guys. And out of all of them, Danny Limelight's the one guy we really saw fit to include in this group. And he's like sort of the guy that like the LA Dojo discovered and have given an opportunity to and has made the most of his opportunity. And, more so than like, say, your Mysteriosos or, Regal Twins, whatever. Like Danny Limelight is the guy who's like really made a name for himself here in Strong so far.
I'm shocked Josh didn't try to squeeze Russ Taylor onto this.
I didn't advocate for him. I like Russ Taylor. The only problem is he was only on a couple episodes during Lions Break Collision. If he showed up on Strong, he would have been on this shit.
Yeah, he just recently reemerged.
Returned. Yeah.
Yeah, he's now part of.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it up to the voters on this one. I really didn't watch too much Strong, but I did watch Karl Fredericks in the Lions Break, like those first like 4 episodes. And he was awesome. So
yeah.
And he was clearly the guy they were building this thing around, and it's good to see people like ACH resurface. That didn't get a look from AEW anywhere, that left WWE under the circumstances he did, and then he was able to kind of just, reemerge here and remind people why he's one of the best guys, because all I hear are positive reviews from ACH.
I'm excited about this category just because this is a new project, new opportunity for a lot of these guys, and we kind of get a chance for the voters to sort of voice their opinion as far as where they think, who's been the MVP so far since this whole experiment, whether it's gone good or bad. Who is the top guy so far, which is awesome.
Yeah, very interesting to see who's going to kind of come out on top here.
I'm going to take us next to Newcomer of the Year and just kind of keep in line with the original order. We've got Alex Zane, Danny Limelight, Dick Togo, Gabe Kidd, Master Wato, and Mysterioso.
Yeah, so an interesting year for Newcomer of the Year. You might consider
it's a weird year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's definitely a weak year. Also in the past, like last year, we had Jon Moxley and Kenta as nominees for Newcomer of the Year. You look back at previous years, there's a lot of big guys.
Shingo, Ishimori.
You're right, and so obviously not the pick of the litter here.
Well, one thing we've changed this year. In the past, if a young lion emerged, we would count that as their Newcomer of the Year status. And then we had previously not allowed people who were coming back from excursions to be counted as newcomers, and I think that kind of screwed things up. We discounted, like, say, Jay White. We discounted Hiromu. We discounted Roppongi 3K. But me and Jeremy have come to the collective conclusion that we think when a guy comes back from excursion, it should be almost like a second reemergence, as long as it's a new character, a new gimmick, and that's the decision we've kind of decided upon. So even though Wato was here previously as Hirai Kawato, we included him in this group as Master Wato.
And based on the in-ring work, it's like it's 2 different people. So
Yeah. Well, you've
Dick
got
Togo being a nominee. That's just pure comedy.
Well, Dick Togo's also an interesting one. That was a judgment call on our part because he's been in New Japan many times over the past 20 years. But when you look at the records, he's never worked more than, say, a single tour per year ever. Never been signed, never been a regular roster member in any actual capacity, never had a real run in the company. Most of them have been one-off matches. And this is the first prolonged run in the company, especially in a managerial role. So we kind of made the call. We're like, yeah, we're gonna include Dick Togo.
Yeah.
I think I might lob up a goofy vote for Dick. Just
And we already kind of highlighted Danny Limelight in the New Japan of America MVP. Alex Zane was a guy that we've seen kind of coming on, working a lot of the U.S. tours. Unfortunately, it's going to be the last time he's nominated for anything because he's now being signed to WWE. He decided
not to go retire.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about the newcomer of the year, and he's already gone.
Amazing.
Yeah, you got Zayn, Limelight, and Mysterioso as sort of like your U.S. guys. Then you got Togo and Wato sort of kind of coming back, and then Gabe Kidd, he's the junior of the bunch, or the young lion of the bunch, I should say.
Yeah, so an interesting kind of mix here. I mean, if you're not really following New Japan Strong, I guess you're going to be leaning towards, Gabe Kidd, Wato, and Dick Togo here.
Hey, I'll say this. I think that this could be the first year that a young lion wins this newcomer of the year in Gabe Kidd. I wouldn't be surprised. But, I think Wato's got some fans out there. He might get some votes. But if you haven't seen Mysterioso, Alex Zane, or Danny Limelight work in the States, you should check that shit out. Especially, dude, Mysterioso, they got him listed as a junior, but he's really a heavyweight, but he works like a junior. It's kind of, it's awesome. He's great.
All right, so now we're going to move on to Fighting Spirit Award. And this award,
yes, back in sync.
Yes, I'm back I'm on script now. Following the script. So Fighting Spirit Award, and so this is awarded to. It's almost kind of like the kind of a career achievement kind of award, or somebody that's kind of fought through adversity, kind of made like a big kind of comeback, and so you'll kind of get the gist based off of the nominees here. So we have nominated Naito winning the double gold dash, Liger's retirement matches and ceremony, Nakanishi's retirement match and ceremony. We had NJPW's handling of COVID-19, Hiromu's New Japan Cup run, Yuji Nagata's resurgence, Yoshihashi wins his first title, Ishii MVP of New Japan Cup and G1, Ibushi wins the G1 back-to-back, and Suzuki best career year for an over 50 wrestler.
This is a tough...
I like it because there's a... Oh.
No, go ahead, Rich.
I was going to say, I like it because it's a good mix of, like, kayfabe stuff as well as, like, kind of real-life stuff that that you can really connect to. And it's going to come down to, what type of voter you are, just like every other award. Of course, that's cliche, but if you value that kayfabe accomplishment, if you value that something a little bit more real you can hold on to, there's a spot for you to select from.
Yeah, that kind of echoes the sentiments I had. I was just thinking, like, same thing. It's like, what is important to you? Is it, and like, for instance, oh man, it's you've also got a mix of some things that are like a hybrid. Liger's retirement match and ceremony along with Nakanishi. That's like, it is kayfabe, but it's also a celebration of their real careers and their real retirements. Mm-hmm. Look at Ishii being the MVP. I mean, he wasn't booked to be the MVP necessarily. He was, in a sense he was, but it's like, it's kind of kayfabe in that, like, he had the best performances, but it's also real because, like, that man went through hell to do that shit,
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, there's just a lot there.
Yuji Nagata, who we talked about earlier, who they kind of called upon during the pandemic to be used in New Japan Cup and be used as a player there. Naito winning double gold dash. That was a whole story and journey in itself of Naito struggling to get to that top spot and to finally beat Okada and win the title.
What was it, like 6 years?
Something like that, yeah. And kind of one of the main stories that was going on when we started this show.
Hiromu running through the New Japan Cup as a junior, very inspiring. I mean, Suzuki, we've gushed over his career this year, so you know all the reasons why. But I mean, 52 years old, accomplished all he did this year, insane.
Yeah, and also New Japan's handling of COVID-19, obviously everybody being thrown out of whack here with COVID, but also New Japan was one of the highlight promotions on kind of how they handled the pandemic and actually shutting down for several months and putting together those together project type of shows and trying to keep content going out there until they could safely return, and start off with the empty arena and finally working their way back to having fans. And as of right now, there have been no cases that have been traced back to any New Japan shows, and they've been able to slowly kind of increase the limit of fans that they've been brought in, and they've just handled this thing so well.
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about that during News Story of the Year for sure, but yeah, you bring up a great point. And then last couple things, Yoshihashi winning his first title, Ibushi winning the G1 back-to-back. I mean, these are the kinds of things that you as a fan can really, like, they're kayfabe, but you can just buy into them because it's your guys getting their moments that they deserve, and it's awesome to see that sort of stuff happen, so it's great.
Well, I think from there we can move on to the Joshua Smith Young Boy of the Year award.
Is Joshua Smith nominated?
It is not named the Joshua Smith Young Boy of the Year award.
But nominated we have Alex Coughlin, Clark Connors, Gabriel Kidd, Yota Tsuji, and Yuya Uemura.
I'll keep it brief. You've got 5 guys that have just really, showcased themselves in a great way this past year. This is an incredible class of young lions. And, I think it's going to be tough for those 2, LA Dojo America guys to kind of outshine what we've seen from the Nogi Dojo guys, including Gabe Kidd.
Yeah, Gabe Kidd looking like Bryan Danielson at times.
He reminds me of Kyle O'Reilly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I always have liked Uemura myself. He's got the look. He's going to be a star, and he can wrestle.
Yeah, and then, speaking of, the LA guys, Clark Connors, he's, been one of the guys that we kind of talked about on New Japan America MVP. He's been one of the highlights on New Japan Strong and on the U.S. programming. And like we mentioned all the time, just reminds me of, a young Chris Benoit with just his intensity and just the way he moves around in the ring. And he's definitely going to be a great asset moving forward. Alex Coughlin, unfortunately, he suffered an injury at the beginning of the tapings of Strong and stuff like that. So he's been kind of missing from the scene. I think he's going to be coming back for the Super J Cup tour, I think, coming back soon at least. And so he's a guy that's going to be kind of hurt by inactivity in the latter half of the year.
Well, we can move on, but let me just say this. Fuck y'all, Tsuji, FTW.
All right, so we'll skip over New Japan of America. That was next, and I jumped ahead on that.
We got the fight of the year.
Yes, the Strong Style fight of the year.
Woo!
Evil versus us.
Oh, my gosh.
Gato versus Rich's Patience.
Correct.
So nominees here, we have Jon Moxley versus Minoru Suzuki from New Beginning in Osaka, Tomohiro Ishii versus Shingo Takagi from New Japan Road, Yuji Nagata versus Minoru Suzuki from New Japan Cup, Sho versus Shingo Takagi from New Japan Cup, Minoru Suzuki versus Shingo Takagi from Summer Struggle in Jingu, Tomohiro Ishii versus Minoru Suzuki from the G1, Kota Ibushi versus Tomohiro Ishii from the G1, Taishi versus Tomohiro Ishii from the G1, Kota Ibushi versus Shingo Takagi from the G1, Minoru Suzuki versus Kota Ibushi from the G1, and Kota Ibushi versus Taichi from the G1.
Yeah, man.
A lot of great matches.
New Japan's dead, right? They're washed, right? Nothing good's coming out of New Japan anymore, right? Shit's over. The in-house style is done. Gato needs to hang it up. This shit's done, right? This is the best in-ring product. People need to just stop getting it twisted. This is the best in-ring product in the world, including AEW, including Dragon Gate, including whatever lucha, indie, major company you want to mention. This is where the good matches are happening, and this proves it right here. Look at this fucking list. It's incredible.
Yeah.
They should let some of this stuff headline.
They did. Almost all of it did.
Yeah, and we had to narrow this list down. I mean, we had several.
Bro, we had like 45 matches.
Yeah, there were several candidates that we had to narrow down to get to this final nominee list here.
There was literally like 45 matches. It's crazy.
Yeah,
we've talked about a lot of it. I mean, Mox versus Suzuki, fucking ruled. It's Mox's best match of the year, by the way. Better than anything he's done in AEW, and that's not any AEW shade. It is the truth. It's his best match this year. I think probably the match with Omega coming up might outdo it, but yeah, it's better than the Brody Lee or the what's it called? The match he had with any
Eddie
of them,
Kingston,
including the Kingston match. This is the best Moxley match of the year. It's like another feather in the cap to Suzuki. Just two great dance partners. I want to see those guys wrestle again. We talked about Ishii and Shingo. Fucking ruled. Nagata Suzuki. Incredible.
Yeah, we touched on a lot of these G1 matches. Richard, do you have any thoughts on anything else here?
A lot of Ishii and a lot of Ibushi.
It is. It's also a lot of Shingo, a lot of Suzuki, and you got quite a bit of Tai Chi, like kind of peppered in there a little bit too.
Yeah, so pretty much.
Yeah, this one just throw it up in there. It's select 3, and I think you're gonna be spread in this one. Everything's gonna be kneecapping each other.
Anyone who's listening, if you're not familiar with what this is, the idea of this is not what is the best match. It is what is the best fight of the year. That match that you're like, I don't know if that was a match of the year, but that's one of the most violent things I've seen all year long. That felt like a real, actual, these guys hate each other, they're trying to hurt each other, and I was blown away. And that's what the strong style fight of the year is.
Violence.
Yes.
It's violence personified.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next category.
Yeah, we got the junior match of the year, and this will kind of echo the sentiments that we mentioned earlier about the juniors kind of having a down year, so we don't have as many junior matches of the year as normal. But our category, or our candidates this year, Hiromu and Bushi versus the Birds of Prey from Road to Tokyo Dome, Will Ospreay versus Hiromu Takahashi, Wrestle Kingdom 14 Night 1, Barbaro Cavernario versus Caristico from Fantastica Mania, Hiromu Takahashi versus Ryu Lee, New Beginning in Osaka, Roppongi 3K versus the Mega Coaches from New Japan Road, and finally, Hiromu Takahashi versus Taiji Ishimori, Summer Struggle in Jingu.
Yeah, so like we mentioned...
Slim and trim category that kind of reflects the year.
Yes.
Yeah, like we mentioned, definitely reflects the year, reflects the lack of focus on the juniors due to the pandemic. And, I mean, honestly, I think for the top spots, it's going to be kind of a two-match race there with Ospreay versus Hiromu and Hiromu versus Ryu Lee. And the rest will kind of fall in place. This is the first year that I think we've had a Fantastica Mania match that's made the cut.
Fantastica Mania always has a banger, but isn't up to the same caliber as maybe a lot of the like Super Junior matches. But this year, no Super Junior, so Cavernario and Caristico get on there. And spoiler alert, I voted for that match. In one of my
Hiromu Takahashi guaranteed to place on this. He's in 4 matches on this.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, and that speaks to his candidacy as a, junior wrestler of the year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people they might have forgotten about the Hiromu Bushi versus Birds of Prey that happened in December. That was just a great matchup, and remember that is a part of our voting period this year. So that is a match, if you haven't seen, it's definitely worth a watch before you vote here. And then Roppongi 3K versus Mega Coaches. You had Rocky and Taguchi coming together to face off against Roppongi 3K. We got big match Taguchi, and that was another really good matchup there.
Yeah, that's another, thing when people are wondering why we nominate Rocky. Well, it's matches like this. For my money, the best junior match of the year, or junior tag team match of the year by far. Do we want to move on to the next category, the actual tag team match of the year?
Yes, so this, again, is a new category for 2020, Tag Team Match of the Year. Might have been a down year for juniors, but it was a great year for tag team action here. So
it was an up year for tag matches.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
So our nominees, we have Suzuki and Archer versus Dangerous Tekkers from World Tag League Day 2. Evil and Sonata versus Finjuice from the World Tag League Finals. Ishii and Ospreay versus Evil and Hiromu from Road to Tokyo Dome. Evil and Shingo versus Ishii and Goto from New Year's Dash. Bushi, Evil, and Shingo versus Goto, Ishii, and Eagles from Road to New Beginning. Goto, Okada, and Golden Ace versus the New Japan Dads from Nakanishi's retirement. Golden Ace versus Dangerous Tekkers from Dominion. Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi versus Okada, Yano, and Sho from Summer Struggle. Goto, Ishii, Yoshihashi versus Dangerous Tekkers and Doki from Road to Power Struggle. And Goto and Yoshihashi versus Dangerous Tekkers from Road to Power Struggle.
We wanted to have this tag. We've talked about doing it in years past and hadn't done it, but we wanted to have a tag team-centric award because while this company isn't known to have strong tag team booking, when you look at every card, they have tag team matches all throughout the year, and there's so many great tag team matches that get forgotten year after year. We just wanted to have this kind of award so that stuff can kind of get recognized. And most of these matches are either not involved in almost any feud or they're like B or C level feuds, but the actual quality of these matches are just so far and away. You can compare them to the tag matches in almost any company and they're going to be right up there. So that's why we kind of wanted to shine a spotlight on the tag team action that happened in New Japan this year.
A lot of evil on this list. It's like
because
different. Because, there's somebody in there to wrestle for him,
No. Evil is a fantastic tag team wrestler. Always has been. He's just not a great singles wrestler.
Just let the joke ride, man.
Bro, my shit's a joke, too. This man is a fantastic tag team wrestler. It's like putting the IWGP title on Marty Jannetty,
I think the match here that's probably going to get a lot of love is Golden Ace versus Dangerous Tekkers. That's probably the most high-profile matchup on here. It's for tag titles. It was on Dominion. And, a lot of these Road 2s, a lot of World Tag League stuff, I think people might have either not watched or forgotten and might try to focus in on some of the bigger matches.
I agree. Suzuki, Archer, and Dangerous Tekkers really got a lot of love when it first happened. It was a year ago. I'm wondering how many people remember it, but that was like one of the tip-top standout matches of the Tag League last year, as well as the finals between Sonata and Finjuice, LIJ and Finjuice. Even better than the Wrestle Kingdom match that they had for sure.
Yeah.
The Evil, Shingo, Ishii, and Goto match from New Year's Dash, one of the best tag team matches of the year. Literally, if we consider it for Strong Style Fight of the Year, that's how hard-hitting that match was, and we barely cut it.
Yeah, I mean, we always beg for that Ishii Goto team, and we got it at the beginning of the year, and it was awesome.
Feel-good matches. There's always the Nakanishi retirement match. People might hand-wave it because it's Nakanishi. Don't make that mistake. That match fucking rules. I loved it. Very emotional. Incredible to kind of see the dads go up against top stars in the company to kind of send Nakanishi off in style. And then the match we've talked about, the six-man from Summer Struggle, where Yoshihashi finally wins his first title. That was another really big feel-good moment, as well as a great match as well.
Yeah, so some really, really awesome tag team matches here for you to consider for Tag Team Match of the Year.
Absolutely. If you guys haven't seen anything on this list, everything on this list is above 4 stars. You need to go watch it.
Yeah, and that takes us now to the Excursion Match of the Year. So also this is a category for Great matches that featured New Japan wrestlers that happened outside of New Japan. So our nominees for this, we have Dragon Lee versus Kenny Omega from AAA Triple Mania. We have
Regia. Or I don't know how you pronounce it. But it's not it's Triple Mania Regia. It's like weird.
We had Chaos versus the Rascals from Warrior Wrestling 7. Will Ospreay versus Dowie James from MCW Vendetta. Michael Oku versus ELP from Rev Pro High Stakes. Ospreay versus Sabre from High Stakes. Eagles versus Panzer from PWR, Love at First Fight. We had Moxley versus Brody Lee from AEW Double or Nothing. Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher from Rev Pro Epic Encounters 3. And then Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston from AEW Full Gear.
We had at least over 100 candidates here. It's one of the awards we worked the hardest on all throughout the year, just keeping track of every match these guys are having outside of New Japan. And we got to a point where like we wanted to have 10 matches like we normally do. But we had a standard. It needed to be above a certain quality of level. And we just came to a point where, like, you know what? These are the 9 that are above that quality. Everything else is just a smidge below it. Rather than split hairs, we're going to keep it just these 9. And that's kind of how we came to this finale here.
Yeah, big category here. Lots of great Will Ospreay work. You get the return of Kenny Omega into the Keeping It Strong Style Awards. Thought you got rid of him, you know. So he's here to collect, you know. Then also a lot of mocks on there. Yeah, a lot of, and then don't sleep on like if you guys haven't seen it, Will Ospreay versus Dowie James.
Yes.
Incredible. And you know, I don't mean to single this match out just as like, you know, something to watch, but if you haven't seen it and maybe you already voted, maybe you already put it in, go watch it, because Dowie James, like, you think about guys that are just tucked around the world that are really good and no one knows about them. I saw this match, I was like, who the hell is this Dowie James guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that match absolutely incredible.
That match is fucking incredible. Another incredible Ospreay performance just recently happened. Epic Encounters 3, him and Kyle Fletcher. We had it on the list. Jeremy watched it first, and Jeremy goes, you know, this is my rating. He throws out the rating, and I was like, that doesn't sound fucking right, because on every single website, every single, you know, ratings site, it's super low rated. And like Jeremy goes, there's no fucking way that's possible. Like, go watch it. I go and I watch it, and I go, oh my God. one of the best empty arena matches of the COVID era, and that's no cap. Like, it's so good. So that's another one I want to kind of shine some light on, because, you know, Moxley Kingston, Moxley Brody Lee, both really good. People have seen it, they've heard of it. You know, they're you know, the AEW
do well. Yeah,
they're probably going to do well because they just happen to do well. But if you haven't seen Ospreay Fletcher or Ospreay James, you need to see it. The Red Pro stuff is awesome.
Yeah, I definitely, like you mentioned,
Dragon Lee and Kenny Omega in AAA.
You saw that match, right? The AAA match, Rich?
Yeah. You talk about it like just a different environment, it being in Mexico. So I believe it was a AAA title match, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's for the Mega Championship.
Yeah. So I always wanted to see Kenny wrestle against like Dragon Lee, and then it's a dream match that happened out there. So.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
That was an awesome matchup. Yeah, the Rev Pro stuff was great. Like I mentioned, that Ospreay Fletcher match. Kyle Fletcher, this guy's put on so much weight. He used to be a string bean. Now he's a solid, thick boy, and just had this great hard-hitting match of Ospreay. The Ospreay Sabre match where Ospreay finally wins the title was great. Oku finally winning.
That one has a really good chance of possibly winning with how highly rated it was this year. I just don't know how many people will remember it.
Yeah.
But it's like one of the highest rated matches of the year.
Oku beating ELP to win the Cruiserweight title was a great moment there. Eagles versus Panzer. This is a match that happened in the Philippines. Robbie Eagles kind of coming in almost in a Will Ospreay kind of role, like a star, to put over the local guy Panzer, who was their PWR champion. And that was a great matchup there.
Bro, Chris Panzer's so good. They kind of just have an emerging, you know, like indie scene in the Philippines, sort of like how Australia was a couple years ago. Do yourself a favor. Go watch this Eagles versus Panzer match. It's on YouTube. It's free. It's like 30 minutes. I made Jeremy watch it. Like, it's fucking awesome, right?
Yeah, real awesome.
Chaos versus Rascals. That was the Chaos team of Ospreay, Rocky Romero, and Amazing Red against the Rascals, and it is the fastest-paced, most high-flying, death-defying match of this entire list.
Yeah.
There's a reason that we have a 6-man tag on a Excursion Match of the Year list. It's crazy.
RLPW certified.
Yeah. and you know, we'd be remiss. I don't want to skip over it, but like, people have seen the Brody Lee and the Kingston stuff with Moxley, but like, Moxley have an incredible year. I mean, he had a bunch of matches that could have been on here. The match with MJF, the 2 matches with Darby Allin, a bunch of shit. Like, he's had a fantastic year. These were the 2 we felt like were the best of the voting period. But I mean, he won this award last year with Kenny Omega. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again, honestly.
Yeah, just that exposure and know how well received those matches were. Big title matches as well. Can't discount that. And recency, like that Mox Kingston is fresh on people's minds.
Yeah.
One last thing. Oku Phantasmo, I watched this match. You guys know how I feel about ELP, and when I got done, I said, oh my God, it's got to be on the list. So if I'm saying it's got to be on the list, and I don't even really like ELP, it means something. You need to go see that fucking match.
I noticed you really love all the ELP matches where he loses.
Well, no, actually, I'll give him some more praise. You know what? I think Oku's very good, but I think Oku's super green, and I think Phantasmo led him to a great match.
Wow.
How about that?
Young boy putting over the headbanger.
Yeah, we'll see. He's got a J Cup
back scratch.
he's got a J Cup coming up, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm very excited. We worked really hard on this award, so I hope you guys enjoy that one. If you haven't seen any of these matches, they come with our highest recommendation.
Yes. And with that, now we have
last 2.
Yeah, 2 categories left that we can get through here pretty quickly. We have Angle of the Year. So obviously for the best angle, our nominees, we have Suzuki attacking Moxley at Wrestle Kingdom 14, Kenta attacking Naito at Wrestle Kingdom 14, Sabre attacking Mox at New Beginning in Osaka, Evil joining Bullet Club, Dangerous Techers leaving Golden Ace laying at New Japan Road, Dick Togo returning and helping Evil win the titles, and Great Okan returning from Excursion and kind of helping Ospreay win, and Ospreay turning on Chaos, all kind of wrapped in one moment there.
Yeah. So you're going to notice a lot of angles here that involve attacks, setting up other title matches, betrayals. This was the year of betrayals in New Japan, and that's kind of what you saw all throughout here. Yeah, a lot of heat.
Yeah. Definitely kind of a lot of key moments, a lot of moments that kind of the promotion was centered around. Also, think back to the beginning of the year with Kenta ruining that moment for LIJ fans and Naito, leading to that big New Beginning in Osaka match. That was a big sellout crowd show. That was a very heated program there. Dangerous Techers, Golden Ace, that's a feud that we've mentioned several times in several categories here. That was kind of a pillar piece in the promotion this year. Obviously, Dick Togo and Evil, kind of a big piece this year.
I'm almost a little questionable about the Dick Togo one because it's something that happened in a match. Yeah. But you know what? Like, fuck it. It's our award, so we
sucked. It led to a bunch of shit that sucked.
Yeah, but you can't judge it that way. You have to judge this shit in a vacuum. This is an angle. It's not a storyline. It's the angle itself. You know what I'm saying? We got Sabre attacking Mox on here, which led to literally nothing. But because it was a fantastic – it only did because of the COVID, but it was an awesome angle that occurred in the ring that was, like, really great at the time.
For me, there was, like, one of these that made everyone really excited. And everything else was like, why are they doing this right now? I can't believe this happened. Some stuff you don't even remember. Like leaving Golden Aces, Techers and Golden Aces. Well, they just did that one a bunch of times. That's why
They did it twice.
Yeah. So
For
me, one of these
what's
really
the one that
excited
stands
everyone.
out? Is it Suzuki
I think
attacking
it's-
Moxley?
Oh yeah, unquestionably the monster reaction that it got. I remember our Wrestle Kingdom party of us feeling like something would happen there. The crowd going absolutely nuts. Him dropping Moxley on his shit. Moxley getting up and kind of smiling, knowing he unlocked that damn beast. And the emergence of Minoru Suzuki back in 2020. Oh yeah, this is a great one.
Yeah, we had a tough time with this one because the next night Mox came down in Korakuen Hall and attacked Suzuki. Those are almost like two sides of the same coin, and we love that moment too. We almost nominated, but we're like, let's just split the difference, pick one that's we picked the Wrestle Kingdom one, but yeah, absolutely, I totally agree with you. Not totally, I don't agree that all these were bad, but I agree that was great.
Yeah, definitely the one most excited for. I mean, there's videos of people running from the bathroom back to their seats when they hear Suzuki's music playing and coming down to attack Mox. And so, yeah, definitely a great moment here. I think a lot of these angles, maybe they might not, be ones you remember or something that stand out, but a lot of these angles were stuff that built the stuff and were kind of some key angles in the promotion that led to a lot of the main stories.
Hey, I'm going to throw it out there. Evil turning on Naito after he won the New Japan Cup. It's the biggest angle of the year. I don't know if it's going to be the angle of the year, but it's the biggest angle in terms of fan interest, reaction, everything of that nature. Nobody knew what the fuck was going on. And for a moment, whether you liked the direction it went afterwards or not, it was like, holy shit, did they just fucking break this man Evil out and put him in charge of the Bullet Club? What the fuck's going on? That was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that wraps up the angle of the year. I think we can move on to the last category.
The news story of the year, the biggest events in New Japan. So starting off, we have New Japan losing their Access TV deal in the States. After that, Tetsuya Naito becoming the first ever double champion. Nakanishi retiring. Tiger Hattori retiring. New Japan shutting down due to COVID. New Japan running Jingu Stadium. New Japan Strong being announced as a weekly show in the States. Harold May resigning and them announcing a new president. King of Pro Wrestling being announced by Kazuchika Okada. And finally, New Japan set to run the Tokyo Dome 2 nights in a row again.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting stories here. Again, a little bit of a mix of kayfabe and reality, with Naito becoming the double champion. We kind of talked about that in Fighting Spirit, along with Nakanishi retiring. One retirement we didn't mention was Tiger Hattori. He had his retirement show and finally retired this year. And then New Japan Strong, we have the announcement of that new program that's been running weekly on Fridays. So a little bit of your kayfabe kind of stuff there. And then you have the more kind of reality-based stuff, like New Japan losing their Access TV deal, which was a really big story this year.
Bigger than people probably give credit for.
I would say so, yeah. It's actually something that we almost kind of skipped over and forgot about. And when we were doing these awards, we're like, oh yeah, I guess that happened. And we're like, I guess that was a big deal, wasn't it? We're like, yeah, that was a really fucking, yeah, actually it's huge. What are we thinking? How's this not on our, ballot yet?
Yeah, and then also, Josh, I know you wanted to highlight, New Japan shutting down to COVID. We mentioned it in the Fighting Spirit Award. Was there more you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just, everybody had to handle this situation in different ways, but, I would say outside of maybe Ring of Honor, of all the companies that are actively running, especially major companies, nobody handled the COVID situation better than New Japan Pro Wrestling. I mean, not trying to openly criticize any other companies, but I mean, we see what's happened in other companies with the outbreaks, with the probable spread to, fans in attendance at shows, things like that, hypothetically, but definitely to the, to the actual performers, definitely to family members. and you kind of contrast that to what New Japan did, where they were like totally shut down. You know, doesn't matter that they're publicly traded, doesn't matter that they got shareholders to answer to. You know, they still paid their talent along the way. They put every safety precaution in place. They, you know, have literally just gone above and beyond in every single sense of the term to ensure the safety of the performers, the fans, the company itself, everybody involved, like the workers, the stage crew, the production crew, the talent, everybody. It's really commendable. And again, I'm not like trying to down other companies. I get everyone did the best they could, but like you really have to.
Because there is an element
of
of like Japanese culture here too, like taking this like and just overall being better than everyone else too.
There is, but there's also the fact that every other Japanese company across the board did the opposite of New Japan and ran and probably spread the shit and endangered people. And New Japan, you know, now granted, they still had the luxury of the fact that they are the largest and most well-off financially, the biggest, but they still, I mean, Harold May probably lost his job because of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality here. Like, he probably is not president right now because he wasn't able to come through on his promises, mostly because of this COVID situation, and it took them from being on this trajectory of being extremely financially viable to they still made a profit, but it wasn't what anyone expected. He probably lost his job over it, and you kind of have to applaud them for that and really take notice that, like, this company literally shut down unprecedented for like 4 months. It was crazy.
Yeah. And I think one thing that should touch on briefly is KOPW being announced. I know a lot of people probably see, you know, KOPW for what it is now, you know, a complete joke. But at the time when KOPW was announced, it seemed like a very serious thing. They had a big press conference. They had Kazuchika Okada announcing it. They made a real big deal about it. Everybody was talking about, you know, what is KOPW going to be? Are we going to see a cage match? Are we going to see a ladder match? Or, what are we going to see in New Japan? A lot of diehard pure elitists being upset about the possibility of stipulation matches and people being like, oh, you know, it'll mix it up. It'll be great. And so you had this kind of big discourse going on between KOPW. And so the overall announcement of it was a big news story and moment. But then also, if you look retroactively, it ended up just kind of being a joke.
Out of doing the press conference, that was a big deal. It just was.
Yeah. Any final thoughts here on any of these news stories?
So Evil winning the title, becoming the second double champion wasn't on here.
No, because when you do it the first time, then it's like really important. The second time's not as important.
There has been one thing that has dominated the main discussion, or one of the main discussions coming out of New Japan. It's like, what the fuck happened here? And just as a news story and something happening, I don't know. And then I'm torn on it. I feel like it should be there, but I understand why you guys did this, because it's like, well, Evil was not nominated for Wrestler of the Year. Evil was not nominated, didn't have any matches, pop up in Match of the Year. Like, it led to nothing but disdain from lots of folks. I don't know. It is a lightning rod story, though.
I guess, but I mean, them unifying the titles for the first time ever, on the second night of the Tokyo Dome is like a much bigger story than like someone took it from Naito. It doesn't matter who it was. It could have been Kazuchika Okada. It could have been Jon Moxley. It wouldn't have been as big of a story, literally. And you know what, like, before we go, one thing is, like, I'll say this. I think that this story, like this sort of sentiment about, like, what the fuck happened in New Japan, I really think it's overblown. I think it could wind up being one of the – I think right now people are acting as if it is the current state of things, whereas I think it's one of those things where people are going to have to say, I was ahead, because it's not the current state of things. A year from now, maybe we'll find out it was, and maybe things are really bad and they're not going to get back on track. But, like, dude, I think it's like trying to grab the cookies before you let them like cool down. Like, look at this year. Like, if you go through everything that we just went through, like, this has been a fantastic year for a company that was going through COVID, just like every other company. And honestly, aside from a few things being problematic in the main event scene, which I get it. The main event scene is the thing that people focus the most on. It's the thing that it's the last thing that, at the end of a show, you want to, kind of reflect on, and it really affects everything. But like, this company's been fantastic. This company's been fantastic, top to bottom. Aside from like 5, 6, 7 matches, it's really overblown. And like, the fact that Dave Meltzer's sort of the one who's like spreading it because it's his opinion, and then it's being spread by like other wrestling journalists. And I know, Rich, you kind of sharing it a bit, but like, I think it's an overblown narrative. I don't think it's the actual state of how New Japan is. And like, we have integrity here. If this shit's whack, we'll call it whack. But like, New Japan's been really great this year.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Josh. I mean,
Look.
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay. No, you got.
I was just saying, yeah, I agree with Josh there, and yes, definitely. I hate the evil stuff as much as the next guy and all the interference and cheating, and I am a little bit disgruntled with all the ref bumps and the increase of ref bumps that we've been seeing this year all throughout the promotion. But overall, I still think from a bell-to-bell in-ring product, New Japan still delivers. I mean, you look at the G1, you look at these strong style fights. We even have a tag match category and a lot of stuff here. There's still a lot of incredible matches this year, and I think they still have the roster to have incredible matches, and I think we'll continue to see that as long as those guys are there.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff that's happening. It's just, it feels like the spotlight's in weird places. And then thinking about how like some of the booking is played out, how they set up the title matches for the domes. It's convoluted. It's like WWE in a sense. And I just don't think you can escape that. Like, but as far as like, looking at the nominees on everything here, you're always going to be able to find good in New Japan.
Yeah, I feel like, and I agree with you, I'm not a fan of how they booked the dome this year. I think the fact that they have 2 domes, they continue to do this double gold situation is a convoluted situation. I agree with Jeremy. Too much cheating, it's becoming a problem. We talk about these things weekly on the show, but ultimately, this is a transitional year that was A, affected by COVID, and B, they're trying to phase down some of these older stars to get some of these newer guys ready, and there's going to be growing pains, and I think we're suffering from a little bit of those growing pains. Now, if next year the bullshit continues and it doesn't get better, I'll call it out. But like, when you've got Ospreay on deck, and you got Shingo on deck, and you got Sho on deck, and all these other guys, I find it really hard to be like, shit's done. It's like, it's not done. What are you talking about? They got like the best talent roster in the world. What are you talking about? So I just find it I don't know, like, Hiromu's on deck, bro. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and also too, I think with COVID, one area that they got one area they got hurt with COVID was the inability to bring in foreigners. They weren't able to bring in Moxley. Can you imagine if Moxley was there all year, and if they could have bring in ACH and TJP and all their junior imports and guys like that. Brody Lee's a guy who's mentioned wanting to go to New Japan. If they were able to kind of capitalize on a lot of these guys being released from WWE, I think we would be talking about even better year than they had this year.
Well, we will see what happens, and we'll be here again next year detailing all of it for you guys, unless it goes too far south, and then Keepin' It Strong style dies.
And then One Nation Radio becomes a 4-man show.
If there's another, I was gonna say if there's another year of IWGP title matches with the garrote wire in them, and and just mid work, I don't know.
Well, I would just like to say I'm thankful for this company still putting on the best matches of any company in the world, and I'm thankful for you guys being here to, catalog it with me and kind of give the rundown so our listeners can put in their votes, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, another great year-end preview tradition show that we do here. So guys, go out and get your votes. The ballot is open. Look on our Twitter at KI Strong Style. You can find on our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/wrestling_circle. You can join our Discord group. It's called the Social Suplex Discord. You can look on the New Japan Reddit. Again, if you voted last year, you should have an email in your inbox from the email you gave us last year to the ballot. So, and also share this with your friends. Every year we have the goal of increasing the votes, and we've been able to do that every year. Beating the total from the previous year. So we definitely want to do that again this year. So vote, share the ballot with your friends. Every wrestling group that you're a part of that talks about New Japan, share the ballot with them. Help us get these votes up, and we want to make sure we have the best awards out there.
Absolutely.
So that's gonna wrap it up for today. Get out there, vote, and keep checking out Keeping It Strong Style. We'll be back next week for a regular episode to break down all of the World Tag League and Best of Super Junior action that's been going on. And so, until next time, we'll see you later.
Peace.
Goodbye and good night. No, I'm just kidding.
We don't say it. We don't say that shit no more. Neither does he.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.